Hey, what's up? Ken from Palm Beach Dyno here. Welcome to PBD Live. Keep track of all these episodes in little folders, and we're already up to episode 9. Feels like we just started this, so I'm really enjoying it. We're going to start with something new tonight. We're going to have a live interview, or live guest, I'd call it, because it'll be a little bit of an interview deal with Kelly, but we're also going to do question and answer. We'll BS a little bit, talk about our history together, how our paths have crossed a few times in the past, and what's going on with his new company, his car, all those sorts of things. So what's up? Thanks for joining us. T-Web is here for some suspension knowledge. Carlos Vera, what's up? Weather's starting to turn around, looking good. We got to get your car back to the track. Justin Dean, what's up? He's got some Warriors, need some help from Kelly. Chandler, what's up? Revit Racing, how you doing? Joe Can, how you doing? Steven Mustang, the 3.8 Whipple tuning going. Pretty good. I actually have a video put aside to show you the very first dyno pull with that. We had a nice little fire out of the exhaust there. J Mac Garage, what's up? Hey, Ben. Much better. Thankfully, I won't have to take any breaks during the live feed. Voodoo Kev, what's up? Eric, how you doing? Josh and Joe Cam, Warriors are badass. He's got some BMR springs. Mark, Mr. Shelby, when's your car going to the track? Last chance Saturday. Man, that's so crazy for me to wrap my head around. You know, we've got customers all over the country, all over the world. We just had a customer over in, I don't know exactly where the track is. He lives in the UK, Santa Pod Raceway in Europe. He ran a 10-second pass on some not so good tires with his Whipple. Paramount Speed, what's up? Javi Favo, how you guys doing? Thanks for joining us. So on today's show, we're mostly going to be hanging out with Kelly Aiken from Kelltrac. You guys also know him from BMR Suspension previously. We'll be getting to him in a little bit. We're going to talk just a little bit about the GT500 stuff. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. Alan had a question about GT500 on intercooler. Did you have any boost added to that, Alan? You really shouldn't need an intercooler on 93 setup, but maybe. We're using Whipple on everything. What's up, Terry? All right, T-Web, yeah. When we get Kelly on, we'll talk a little bit more about the suspension side of things. Anyway, let's talk about 2020 GT500. Weather's starting to come around. You know, there's a lot of guys. There's probably like 2 camps on the GT500 so far. People that are like driving their cars and enjoying their cars and loving their cars, that are really part of it and really appreciate how special these cars are, and really judging them 100% off ET. If you're going to judge them off trap speed. And, you know, these cars are starting to, a lot of them are going 150 plus pretty easily now. Obviously, we're real limited, like we have been the whole time, on tuning with transmission. But 150 traps is really getting it done, in my opinion, with, I don't know. Not really sure how much parts that is. I'm still putting together my packages, so. Alan, a 2.7 pulley. Yeah, I can, 2.7 pulley. 703. Oh, it's 6,600. Got to pull it higher than 6,600. Anyway, let's talk about the GT500 ET list. This is the one that we're doing. This includes anybody that wants to be involved, not just Palm Beach Dyno. We are maintaining our own Palm Beach Dyno ET list now in our Palm Beach Dyno customers group, and you can win all kinds of stuff, $100 if you take the number one spot after the new year, every time the spot changes, and also some prizes at the end of the year for the top spots. Anyway, this is the current, I believe, up-to-date GT500 World Super Duper Internet Record World Champion rankings. And it's, shaking up pretty tight there. Obviously, that Evolution car early on did very well. Since then, obviously we've had weather. Most of these cars are all full weight. I know maybe one or two may have had a seat out. I don't think so. So they're all in that mid-9 range. You got Don Walsh right there at the top of the PBD customers at 950, and 955, 956, 956, 962, 966, 969. That 970, the gray one, we leave those up on the list for legacy reasons. That's basically the fastest stock blower pass. We did that, I guess, to give you an idea. We did that around the same time that Evolution went 9-1. So if you tried to run that same car Lee had there, in the weather we've been running in now, it would not be going 970. So once that weather rolls back around, which is right about now, these cars are going to really pick up. But I don't think we're going to see a lot of 8-second ones, so we get some more things figured out. Anyway, now and then my car 973, update on that. No update. I just really haven't had a whole lot of chance. We're so incredibly busy with the business that I just haven't had time to work on my own car. Hopefully here soon. And some of that's motivated by the weather. We've had nothing but rain here for it feels like forever, 3 or 4 weeks. It's never like this, but anyway. All right, let me look at these comments real quick, and then we will dial up Kelly and see if he's home. Let's take a quick look right here at some of these comments. What's up, Walter? Sevens. Yeah, man. That would be awesome. I really hope we can get you there. I don't see why not. Especially if you go with a bigger blower. I mean, that D1 is doing work at 840, I think you went. Voodoo Kev is asking what cooling mods I recommend for a stock blower max effort 2020. I use all the Whipple stuff on my car, the Whipple intercooler and water manifold. Nobody, as far as I know, has done a heat exchanger yet, but hopefully soon. I think there's some benefits there. Jay, hey, I need to talk to you. Good. You probably email me back. I'm not sure. I may have dropped the ball there. I need to hit me up on Facebook, though. I need the final details on your order. They're coming along. They're cutting. I think we're making 20 or 25 all at once, and I think they're almost all sold. So kind of like cut one side and then cut the next side and all that. So he's working through it. Anyway, yeah, so the lid's coming along great. Hopefully they'll be going to anodizing in the next couple weeks, and they'll be shipping right after that. Mark, everyone fast on the list is E85. Yeah, not me. I'm on MS 109 right now, and I'm going to go really fast on MS 109. You'll see. I'm on MS 109 because I just don't have the time to put towards putting my fuel system in. So MS 109, I can make close to 1,100 on stock pumps with 0 problems. All right. Anyway, let's go ahead and get Kelly on here. Hold on one sec. This is new. I want to make sure I do this right before. There we go. Okay. There we go. Look at that. Our first, I don't know what you want to call it, live feed. What's up, Kelly? How you doing?
Good. What's going on?
Not too much. Just figured we'd have you on here, and I figured there'd be nobody better than to have as my first guest than you. We talk pretty often. We've known each other a really long time. Really haven't worked together for like that whole time, I guess, really. Car wise, when was it? You're 15, really. That's when we started working together. For those of you guys that don't know Kelly, Kelly, most people that are in here that would know Kelly will know him from BMR. He spent quite a while there. How long were you there, Kelly?
About 9 years.
Yeah, so 9 years there. Kelly spent a lot of time not just working at BMR, but representing BMR, giving advice on BMR's behalf, and really, being the go-to guy on suspension stuff in our market. So when he left BMR, I'm sure a lot of people weren't too happy about that as far as, he's a great resource to the community, and I wasn't real happy about it. Although, we continued to talk, and, if I needed Kelly's help, of course I could get it, but I didn't really like the fact that he wasn't in the industry anymore, but that has changed. He has now started, he was always helping people the whole time, I'm sure. The whole time through Kelltrac isn't almost really anything new. He's just wrapping a name around it. And the idea of Kelltrac is specialized shocks and struts to his and it's not just the suspension stuff. I'll let Kelly kind of give you the rundown, but the idea is that personal feel. You can go out and buy. Well, first off, you can't just go and buy the stuff that he's selling because it's especially to his valving. But even if you just go buy off the shelf Viking stuff, which is good quality stuff, if you don't have somebody to lean on to help you, you might wind up really making things worse by adding an adjustable suspension. So when you buy everything through Kelly, he helps you, gives you all the right settings, and every car is a little different. There's some stuff that's kind of, to take a little bit of the voodoo out of it, Kelly, I don't even love telling people this story, but one of the most successful cars that Kelly helped us work on is the first 7-second 6 or 80 car. And that car went 1.20 60 foot, and we never really pushed the 60 foot all the way because of, the whole trans brake issue on the 15 through 17, which eventually did bite us. And that car still went 1.20 60 foot. And I'll reveal it now. Kelly told me where to set the shocks and struts, and that car never got touched. Never. Just kept adding boost, power, didn't touch the suspension, and just, from power, we went 130, 128, and then it just kept going. And, I almost couldn't believe it when it went 120 without even hardly trying. So that was definitely a 1-1 car all day long, pushing it hard. So anyway, Kelly, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your plans are with Kelltrac and where you're headed with that?
Sure. Thanks for having me on. I know you had mentioned it a while back, and we've just been so busy, But anyways, so to be honest, one of the main reasons that I got into doing the Kelltrac thing is because BMR, I will always be biased towards BMR. The team there is really good. They make amazing products. I could give you 101 reasons why I believe, even after leaving there over a year now, that I think they're the best overall. But that being said, when you have a company, I started there, I think there was about 15 people maybe. Mm-hmm. And now there's about 90 employees.
Wow, that's crazy.
So yeah, it is. We had about, if I remember right, 6,800 square feet, 7,000 feet. Really small. As a matter of fact, the shop that's where we started is Induction Performance. It's a speed shop. So, you imagine BMR suspension handling operations out of a speed shop.
Wait, hold on a second. It started at Induction Performance? Is that what you said?
Well, after we moved out, Victor got that facility from us, but that's where we were.
Okay. The facility. Yeah. I got you. I thought you were saying, I'm sorry, I got lost there. I thought for a second you were saying, I had no idea Victor was involved in that. No, forget it. Sorry.
No.
All right.
After we moved out, we had gotten a facility over off I-4. And Victor got into the facility that we moved out of. So like I said, it's about 7,000 feet. So it's a really nice performance shop. But, you know, a company like BMR, things were just stacked to the roof, you know? So anyways, what I'm getting at is, in my honest opinion, BMR got so big and I hate to use these words, but kind of cookie cutter, you know? And no offense to BMR, I love the owner, my boss. He did really good things for me, treated me super good. But when you start getting that big, you have to keep rolling. So it would almost be like for tuning. If you only tuned a factory ECU race car, well, you would only tune so much, right? So with suspension, you know, you get to the point where, you know, he doesn't want to be a couple $1 million company. He wants to be an 800-pound gorilla, right?
Right.
So that just made my life a lot harder. So when I started, you know, when I left, BMR's Mustang segment was probably 10 times larger than it was when I started. And it was just stressful. I mean, I know you know Ken, but any people that know me watching this probably used to see me doing tech support at 1 a.m., you know, every night for 9 years. You know?
Yeah, for those of you guys that don't know Kelly, he's the type of guy that I won't call him what I was going to call him, but somebody will just tag like any BMR rep. It's like 11 o'clock on a Sunday. And like, you're like, what's this guy? I can't believe he's expecting help at 11 o'clock on a Sunday. And Kelly's there answering him anyway. So, or probably messaging in the guy, like, what's wrong with your car or whatever. Kelly has always been the type of guy that, you know, detail oriented with his own cars and always trying to find the little things to make things better. So that kind of like spills over to helping people because, and it's, you know, probably why I personally, although I love tuning cars, just tuning them, I actually enjoy like trackside support, whether it's remotely or in person, more than tuning them because that, you know, it's cool to see a cool little chart on the screen and wow, I picked up 8 horsepower here and more torque here, but ET and mile an hour, or, you know, if it happens to be road racing, I've done a lot of that, but most of the road race tuning I've done has not been to get more power. It's never been to get more power, actually. Well, that's not true. I did work on one program for that, but most of them are for efficiency or power to weight. You're targeting a certain deal. But anyway, point being is Kelly is super detail oriented on all that stuff. So, you know, that's why I get along with him. Actually, real quick, let's watch this video I found because I thought this is a pretty cool tie-in here. This is the very first Palm Beach Dyno video ever. In fact, it doesn't even say it in the title, and it's not even on the Palm Beach Dyno YouTube. I couldn't find it at first. It's on my personal YouTube, which if you guys want to subscribe to that, I'm going to start doing more stuff on my personal YouTube also. So anyway, so look at that, VMP Superchargers. This is back when we liked those guys. Just kidding. Anyway, let's watch that. Pretty cool. $899. Why don't you tell everybody, Kelly, a little bit about that car and what makes that significant? Because, you know, That video, when was that? 2016, I think. Nowadays an 899 is still a very good accomplishment, but people are used to seeing it a lot more than they were back then by a large margin. So tell everybody about what that car was about.
Yeah. So, I always liked independent rear suspension cars. As a matter of fact, you can see my 04 Cobra I used to have right here. I used to race that car and street race it, whatever. I sold that car to get my S550, and it was just crunch time right when I got it. Put blower on it. I was pretty much, I don't really talk about this a lot, but I was probably the first person to put any modification on a car in terms of a consumer. Race brakes, drive shaft, anything. So, I couldn't buy anything because nobody had anything. So even the fuel system stuff, I tried to buy fuel system parts, and that didn't work out. So
I mean, in general, remembering back, it was a little bit of a struggle the whole way, really, right? I mean, I remember, again, we knew each other back then, but I don't think we were super tight, so we didn't talk about it directly, but I watched a lot of it unfold. And you were like hardcore hot to try to be the first this, first that, but like there's a lot of
there was a lot of things that happened.
Things along the way that made it a little tougher.
Yeah, so a little backstory there, and I guess I'll go ahead and talk about it. Who cares? I was really good friends with Justin at VMP for a long time, well before the Coyote came out, and we made an agreement, and I said, let's work together, and I'll do whatever I need to do. And I fulfilled my promises to everybody that helped me with that car. So, and that's something that I didn't want to let go. And honestly, when I said I was the first person to put a bunch of mods on a car, Ken probably could agree. I was probably the first person to blow a motor.
Yeah, I was there for that.
Yeah. So, anyways, what happened was I modded this whole car. Colt Mills at BMR, my boss at BMR, he helped out a lot. And people still to this day, they ask me, was that your car? Was that BMR? That was all me. I did get help with many areas, but long story short, that's what happened. I modded that car and nobody could tune it. So I flew people in from Texas, with the agreement that if you can't tune it, then I'm not paying you. I had people staying here for weeks at a time. And the most that car would do is idle a little bit, and you go to push the gas and it'll go into limp mode. So I saw Ken at the track, and he was tuning, I think it was Evolution Performance, came down to Bradenton. And
yeah, I think I was Ken there. What was that? What were they?
Pro Charge car, orange one, red one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it was like one of the first 50. Yeah, that's right. The 15s were new, so yeah.
Right.
I was driving.
So they had like the first centrifugal car, and I had like the first, PD blower car. But, that was 6 months after I had my blower on. I couldn't drive the car, so I saw you at the track, and I said, you kind of laughed and said, "How's your car going?" And I think you kind of knew that it wasn't going. But that was what impressed me most is, when you said I could have it figured out in 2 weeks. So I'm like, nah, that's what everybody's saying to me, And a couple weeks goes by, and I think I hit you up, and you said, bring it to us. So I trailered it over there. Jim Braun actually trailered my car over there for me.
I didn't know Jim back then, and I guess I never knew that was Jim. I never connected that. Yep. That's interesting.
Yeah, Jim's always out to help people out. But anyways, he gladly took it over there for me, and the rest is history. I was actually on a ride with my daughter at Disney, and Ken hits me up. He's like, "Dude, we just went wide open throttle," and I just couldn't. Yeah. For those, like,
let's explain that.
We gotta go home.
Yeah, for those that don't understand, the main issue back then was using the new, the 15. They changed the electronics around in the throttle body, but most of, especially the TVS cars, were still using the old 11 to 14 electronics, and pretty much from 14 and earlier, all drive-by-wire, some of the throttle position sensors and all that were all similar. So a lot of that stuff wasn't mapped out in any of the tuning software. So when they switched to in 2015, if you tuned it with the 2015 throttle body, it didn't matter because that's what the tune was set up for. But now if you're trying to run an earlier year throttle body, that was the big challenge. So
Yep.
yeah, the first thing was Watt, and then, you know, Kelly actually let me, I don't know why, maybe you were too busy or you had something going on, but I actually took it to the track. Remember that?
Yep.
I went like 10.
Yeah, 10-1 at 139 was like the first pass.
Yeah, that was like the very first pass it made. So pretty cool.
And then, so yeah, we had the engine issue was an intercooler connector came off, and
oh yeah,
again, being a guinea pig, remember I didn't have an IAT sensor, and I remember you actually being leery about that, and I'm like, I don't give a shit, you know, it'll be safe, let's go. But because remember, there was no intake temperature sensor for the blower cars at that time.
Yep.
So the computer didn't know that the car was hot or anything, you know?
Yeah, basically it was just a perfect storm to put I mean, it was a very interesting failure, honestly, because one piston had a hole in it, you know, but the other ones didn't really look that bad. I mean, obviously I'm sure they were all really, really hot, but they didn't really all look.
Number 6 piston had a very small hole in it.
Yeah.
So. And that's when it all went down. I mean, that's when it went crazy. It was, you know, rods, pistons, you know.
Yeah, that all developed pretty quickly. I mean, I'm trying to think. It must have been I remember being at Bradenton with you. You were there and you were going to run the car and try and go fast. I think it was right before that. When was that you went to 899? What time of the year was that? I don't remember. I already closed.
It was early 2016.
Right.
January or February, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, you did that, and then you probably came to NMRA Bradenton or something like that after that.
Yeah. Then I ran low 9s in the heat of the day and all that stuff, and you know that was pretty cool. That was a fun time for me because I remember telling you to get more and more aggressive, and you didn't want to.
Yeah, you know, back then, you know, this was an all new engine again for us. I mean, there are similarities obviously with the 11 and 14, but we didn't know exactly what we were dealing with, especially with boost. So, obviously it turned out to be an amazing motor, as well as the 18 plus. I mean, they're all great. 11 and 14 obviously are pretty fragile. So I'm going to scroll through some of the comments here, Kelly, real quick. Let's see if we can, take some questions here. All right, let's back up. I'm sorry, there's quite a few comments here. AC469, did Project Lullaby ever switch to E85? I don't know. I need to talk to Mike. I haven't talked to him in a little bit. Godzilla 7.3 updates. We'll talk about that in a little bit, maybe. Jess, hey, what's up? Andrew LaChance trying to get some 1.2 60 foots out of a Gen 1 Coyote stick shift S197. Would you go Steeda or UPR? I'd go BMR, and I would talk to Kelly about some struts and shocks for your setup.
I know Andrew really well.
Is he messing around?
He's being silly. He's got a very impressive stick shift car.
I thought maybe so, but whatever. Maybe somebody really wants to know that.
He's being silly. He's got a mid 9-second stick shift car with a couple basics. Like BMR control arms and
jokesters.
Yep.
Jay Bradshaw says he feels like he's about to test you with the struts that he just ordered from you. What's his setup? Do you know off the top of your head? What's your maybe you can?
Yeah, I don't know how much I can talk about it, but it's a new Edge Cobra.
Bradshaw is.
Fast car.
Cool.
He ordered a setup from me today, and I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody because I think it's cool when people do this, but he overnighted them.
Jeez.
So for a coilover kit, just want to touch on that real quick. For a very hefty fee, you can so Viking's about 15 business days out to build my stuff for me right now. But for a very hefty fee, you can get them built and shipped, you know, very quickly. Now, doesn't mean that everybody can do it, and not everybody's going to want to spend that kind of coin. I mean, just an overnight shipping charge alone is about $350 for a coilover kit. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
but it can happen if you
business,
really
Jared.
have to. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Looks like you got some other customers in here. Brian D says he just got his order in last week. Kevin Chandler's installing his shocks this week.
Nice. Dang. Kelltrac the world, right?
Jay Fitz says he's talked to you on the phone at BMR. Scott Beck is going Kelltrac.
He's got the convertible, I think.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, I know Scott. What company should I call for Fox body rear suspension? Kelly, why don't you chime in on that? Like before, while Kelly was there, they didn't have Fox body, and then I know they started developing the Fox body deal, but then now that you're not there anymore, I'm not sure where that went. You know, is it not?
It's kind of funny because during my very first interview, my first conversation with the owner of BMR, he took me out to eat before I worked there, and we talked about things. And to be honest, those were always my bread and butter. I loved 79 to 04 Mustangs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was really good with the suspension on them. That was always what I like to play with. So we had talked about suspension, and he actually said, give me your top 10. What do you think that the industry wants, and what have you not seen out of the industry? And it's really easy in that industry because this may hurt some feelings, but man, honestly, there's a lot of junk parts in that industry. And there's a whole bunch of copies, honestly. So, and you know, that's just how the industry goes. But it's just been like the same type of parts for so long.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first parts that,
no innovation, just like, hey, I'm going to come out with a control arm. How does this guy do it? I'll do it that way and paint it different color. You know.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
So,
sorry.
No, that's okay. But like, you know, when I had those cars, I always wanted an A-arm that could use a stock spring. I was always a stock style suspension guy, and wasn't really many offerings. So little things like that. You know, the sway bar mounts on the rear control arms. Mm-hmm. When you change the geometry and you change the height of a Fox body, it changes the sway bar angle because the sway bar attaches to the control arms, right? Right. Nobody ever had adjustable sway bar position. So, you know, that's one of the things that I had them put into the design on those control arms is, you know, to be able to adjust the height of the sway bar in the back. But anyways, BMR makes really good Fox body parts, honestly.
I know. I was real excited about it when that was all developing and you were showing me the pictures of it. I mean, it seemed to be very well thought out, trying to do things a little differently, but not just to be different. I mean, you know, there's no point in just being different. You know, try and bring something new to the table. So I think, you know, we don't obviously work on a whole lot of Fox body cars in person. I mean, we tune a lot, swap cars, but not a lot of those cars. So I don't have any direct experience with that, but obviously I would definitely check out the BMR Fox body stuff.
Yeah, good.
Javi says he can't wait for some Kelltrac struts. Like you said, what are you out, like 15 days on a normal order?
Yeah, about 15 days. Usually the average time somebody asks me about shipping after I tell them 15 days is about 7.
Yeah.
So,
well, 15 days, you're already to mid-November now. So, you know, if you want to get something for Christmas, you might want to get your order in.
Yeah, it's about 15 days. And you know, and sometimes I tell people they don't, and here's the deal. The big difference, I've been using Viking stuff since really they came out for the Ford segment, and and I've been testing. You know,
why don't we? Let's back up a second. Let's talk about that real quick. Like, what made you decide to work with Viking? Obviously, you're working with them fairly closely.
Yeah. So when I was at BMR, we used Viking for quite a few products, and you know, we used to use QA1 and Strange and stuff, and I like JC at Strange. I've known him for a long time. Matter of fact, I kind of coined that whole Strange front, Viking rear, BMR spring combo that, I don't know, probably half the people watching use. So that being said, one thing that I take pride in is making sure that something is A, worth the money for return on investment, and B, works. I refuse to push something that I can't sleep at night, right? So before BMR was actually a Viking shock dealer, before BMR actually sold their shocks, I got a couple sets on a couple different cars to test out. Now this is going back, 2013, maybe 12, 11. I mean, it's, and I could not believe for the price tag, the results that we got out of those shocks. So that was when I knew, okay, these things are the real deal. So I had many conversations with, the owners of Viking about, their goals and, how can they do what they do. But really what Viking did is they streamlined a double adjustable shock. They don't offer non-adjustable. They don't offer single adjustable. They offer a double adjustable as their base, which is their Warrior. And that's how they do it. That's how they can sell a double adjustable shock for, $179 to $249 cheaper than the next person.
And it's a high quality shock.
Oh yeah.
One of the owners of Injector Dynamics, Paul Yaw, he's
I remember that.
He's a big suspension guy, obviously. Also, for those of you that don't know, he has Yaw suspension, and they just won a championship last year in the side-by-side deal, like the televised deal. And as part of his R&D on that and everything he does with suspension, he has a shock dyno. So he offered to dyno a set of my Viking rear shocks, and he was absolutely impressed by them, which is hard to it's hard to do for Paul. Knowing that what they were specifically made for, which was drag racing. The valving was very interesting to him, and he really liked what he saw, and the valving was nice. It was kind of spread out decently a lot of the times with some adjustable shocks. And I don't claim to have a lot of background here. I'm kind of regurgitating a little bit of what I've seen Paul do on his shock dyno, but you'll have like a really small range of adjustment, Yep. So
Viking is real wide. That's
right. Then that was the big deal. Like, you can really move the shock around. Whereas, when we say a wide range of adjustment, I don't even want to throw totally bullshit numbers out there. What would be like a compression number for like 1,000 inches a pound?
Right.
What would it be?
Yeah. So a shock works in how many pounds of force it takes to move a shock a certain distance, right?
So pounds per inch.
I'm just trying to talk in layman's terms.
Yeah.
So when you look at a shock dyno, you're going to have, if that shock moves 3 inches per second, so that fast, right?
Yeah.
1 Mississippi, right? Or whatever.
Right.
I'm just trying to make it easy. It takes a certain amount of force to move it that fast. If it moves really fast, then it takes, naturally, it's a higher force, right? It has more resistance the faster you move it. So a lot of the shocks out there, and no offense to the other companies, but there are some very expensive shocks out there which really don't impress me personally. But they are a small range. So Viking, for example, I'll just give you a really easy example. So on a Crusader 600 horsepower drag shock, which, by the way, we can get into that later on why I'm not really a big fan of that rating system, but at position 1 click, right? So you click let's just talk extension, because that's Crusader. I'm just going to say right now, Crusader is extension only. Just had somebody the other day, an S550 guy that ordered some Crusaders from somebody, and he had messaged me saying that everybody told me I needed the compression of a Crusader. Well, if you get a Crusader off an internet website, then the compression is going to be the same as a Warrior. Just want to throw that out there. I don't know who doesn't know that and who knows that. It's only a change in extension. So anyways, back to what I was saying. At 1 click on extension on a Crusader, at 3 inches of shaft speed, 3 inches per second, you may have 450, 500 pounds of force. So it takes 450, 500 pounds of force to move it that fast, right?
Right.
At 16 clicks, believe it or not, that number may be, depending on the valving, 1,500 pounds of force. So whereas like the shocks that we all hear people talk like, these are radial valves, they'll have like 912 adjustments, but from 0 to 912, that range is within, 40%.
Right. It may only go like the example you gave was like 1,000 pounds, I think. 1,000 pounds difference. So yeah, like some of these other shocks might only be like, 300-400 pounds, 500 pounds max across all of them. And then if you wind up being way on the stiff side, it doesn't matter how, you can have on full loose and it's not loose enough, or the other way around. It's looser than you need valved and you have no room to move.
Right.
Now, let's talk, for those that don't know, like, what's the big choices between the Crusader and the Warrior shock? Like, why would you choose one or the other?
So the most important thing for anybody when they're choosing a shock and a strut for their car is to know what the suspension geometry does. Okay. So, Eric Holiday at JPC, he's a good person that can chime in on this. He could probably tell you stories and stories and stories about how fast he has gone on a Warrior shock on an 1,800 horsepower Mustang, right? And the reason that is because picture a car launching and you have a car that squats. You have a car that stays neutral, so it doesn't squat or rise in the back. Now, when I say that, I think you guys know what I'm saying, but it's the distance between the wheel and the fender. So if it squats down on it. If it stays neutral, it stays like this. If it has separation like radial cars, then it goes like this when it hits the tire. That really dictates what you do for your shocks and your struts. So if you have a car that doesn't move down or doesn't move up and it stays like this, to be honest, the shock isn't that important. Because why would it be? You're not moving the suspension up or down. It's kind of neutral. So just a generically valved normal shock would work perfect for that. A good example of that is over time, I have started to set up a lot of the stick shift cars pretty much neutral. That's just been, you can use a slick, you can use a radial. It's all in the clutch on those cars now. So neutral is the way to go, because then you're working that shock less on that hit. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is, when you have a radial car that separates, which everybody's into right now, really what happens is you launch and the wheel goes down into the pavement. The Warrior actually has enough strength to control a 1,500 horsepower car. Now, it doesn't control it really well, efficiently, but it will control it just enough to where it hits the tire and doesn't hit the tire fast enough to squish the tire too much to shove the wheel back up into the car. So you're always adjusting for the counter reaction. That's what I'm talking about here.
Let's break for just a second here and show, like, I was trying to find a video. I should have looked, we didn't really plan this out, obviously, but this is going in a good direction. I think people are interested in this. So, this might be a good video. Tony Hobson, maybe.
I was just going to say, Tony's had some radical,
let's watch
him into doing crazy.
Let's watch one of his launches. This looks like a World Cup. So hold on. I'm going to slow this down. Let's watch his launch. This is a Pro Charge car, correct?
At this time, it may have been.
I think so. It sounded pretty rowdy when he did the burnout. Yeah, there's zoomies on the bottom, coming out the bottom.
Yes.
Here we go. I mean, if you're not really paying attention there, Kelly, you can't see this, can you?
I'm watching it on the okay. YouTube. I saw it.
I
saw it hit the tire.
There's a little delay, I guess, because you're watching it through there. So anyway, I'm going to play it one more time in slow motion. Now, this is considered anti-squat. It's separation. The tire moves down. This is what Kelly's talking about, which is different than what, the whole rear end of the car going down towards the tire. Instead, the tire's separating from the body. Let's watch it one more time. Oh, hold on. I didn't back up enough.
Yeah. So that gap right there between the.
And obviously on a car like this, you're gonna be looking for different amounts, how extreme that gets. You know, we're talking about a 6-second car here, so things aren't moving really, really far, right? I mean, but on some cars, you'll see that get very extreme, the separation between the tire and the body. Like what you know, when might you expect to see that? You know, like you see some of the cars that just get like huge gaps there between the tire and the body, and then something like that, it's very, very subtle. Obviously, that's an extremely fast car. Like on a slower car, does that get you more bite, or why would you want so much more extension on those cars that you've seen?
Well, really, when you see a car that has a lot of separation, what you'll notice is most times it separates continually down the track.
Yep.
So that doesn't mean it's separating all the way through the quarter-mile track, but you know, a couple 100 feet out to hold peak separation is pretty common. I guess to answer your question, there's not a set standard for that. Like, for example, I deal, ever since doing the Kelltrac thing, I deal with a lot of no prep guys and a lot of street guys.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, those are the people that need the help. They've tried to get help, and you know, they have just generic answers. Put the hole, put this here, put that there. Those guys tend to have really good luck with separation and a lot of weight on the back. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody that always races, here's the thing: the better the track is, you know this, Ken. I mean, you know, the better the track is, the more timing you can put on it, the more RPM you can launch at. That's what it's really all about. What I have noticed is that using a little bit of separation instead of squat allows people to get down an average track a little bit better.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is like, so, you know, I've seen some super crazy, like even faster than Tony's cars with some crazy amounts of separation. Are they having to go there because those are so extreme of a car, where Tony's car doesn't quite need to go that extreme because he can still get down? You know what I mean? We're talking the difference between, you know, a 670 car and a car that would probably go 5s in the quarter if they're
cars, but here's the thing. If Tony's car in that video had 700 more horsepower, or you know, it may be a little bit different. The separation, speaking of Tony's car, we use shock sensors on that car, and during NMRA, when that was a turbo car, you know, we would always look and see when peak separation was by looking at the shock sensors, and it was always like when the power was all in at, like, you know, 1.7 or wherever that thing was really starting to, you know, make some big time power, right? But to answer your question, a lot of it has to do with how aggressive the bar angle is and how much power the car has. Because what I mean is, if you have a car that makes 1,000 horsepower and it has a little bit of separation, just because it only has 115% anti-squat, at 30 feet out, if you're bringing in the power gradually at 30 feet out, then you're gonna see a lot more separation than if the car had 700 horsepower, because the force is causing it to separate. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Now, when you see the fast cars that you are talking about that separate 4 or 5 inches, Justin Ciernek, that's a good one.
Yeah, like all those guys, that style racing, you know.
It's crazy separation. What I will say on that car is the person that he gives money to make sure that that car does what it does has their own philosophy and theory on how to do a shock tune along with geometry tuning. So
it's really like a little bit of a stylistic thing, almost like
look at Rob Goss. I think it is Rob Goss.
Yeah,
the Mopar.
The Mopar guy. Yep.
That car squats on the hit. Now there's some interesting stuff that you can get into setting up the suspension just right. You can actually have it neutral or a little bit of squat, and then as the car starts coming back up, it'll start to separate. So it's pretty unique how some of those setups work. But
you know, all these
overall,
those little details are really just a little taste of like all the things that go into like heads up racing that a lot of people don't really understand. And
Right.
that's what leads to the street cars going faster over time. I owe a large amount of my knowledge in this business to like my early on time in the NMRA. I mean, that's what really got me sucked into this business in the first place, was going racing. I didn't even realize that was ever really an option back then. I mean, I got my first NMRA race was the end of 2003. I went to Bowling Green. Well, that's not true. The mod, what was it called back then? I was going to say Mod Nationals. Modular Shootout. Yeah. Do you remember that, Kelly? Yep. Modular Shootout in Columbus, Ohio in 2003 was my very first race ever. There's a bunch of NA 2-valve guys that drove from all over the country. Bill Putnam drove from down here all the way up there for that race, and I had never raced in my life before, and I made it to the finals. I actually lost on the tree, so that always makes me sensitive.
That's to be honest, it's kind of a segue into our past, but one of the reasons
that's a funny story you should tell. I mean, there's lots of stories there probably, but
right.
the t-shirt story is pretty funny.
Yeah. So this is a really funny story. And, I've always joked with Ken, and we have arguments all the time, but I think it's kind of cool because it leads to good ideas and stuff. But years ago, when I got my first mod motor Mustang, it was a 2-valve car. And I found Modular Depot, which was a forum online, and Bill Putnam, who works at UPR, he was at the very top of the page. It said, "Ask Bill." So I found that page because I had a question about a cold air intake that I had bought. And, what better than to ask some guy that's plastered on a forum. So long story short, I got pretty involved with that forum, a bunch of different forums back then. And Ken had owned that forum. And I remember keeping up with what he was doing with his silver car and what everybody did back then. I mean, it was crazy. It's a little bit different how things were back then, but everybody kind of kept up with everybody, and everybody had their different goals. But at the end of the day, the 2-valve community was just a breed of their own. So Ken got in, I think once he did a 4-valve swap, he started ignoring, the peons on the forum.
No. It was when the business started going. I started it as just a forum, and then it led to a shop. And then once I had real customers and everything, I just couldn't pay attention to the forum. But I did put a 4-valve in it.
Yeah.
Anyway, keep going.
But so anyways, he was off setting records, and I taking pictures for magazines of him holding the shifter all pretty. And anyways, so at that time, I've always been an entrepreneur per se. Back then in 2003-ish, 2004, I had a company called Stang Shop, which went away quick because I got a letter from somebody saying don't use the word stang. But anyways, I was making shirts, and I decided to make shirts for the forum, and I was doing it for a good 6 months probably. And everybody was ordering these forum shirts, and it had the username here, and it had the Mod Depot logo on the back. And I think I was making about $1, $2 on them, just very minimal. And I get, this is a forum that I'm heavily involved with. And one day I get on my laptop, I think at the time, I think they just came out or something. And I see a PM from Ken B. And I'm like, sweet. We're going to talk like cool shit, like open it up. And all of a sudden he's just going off on me. Anyways. So he basically he hadn't seen that I was on the forum selling these. I had a thread going and everything, and he had seen it. And I get it now, things like that. I appreciate that because, here was some guy making shirts with his logo on it and selling them to people. And he basically told me to knock it off. So that was my introduction to him one-on-one.
Yeah. I was a little bit different back then. I was a little harder to deal with for sure. That was in the early days of, me getting into cars in general. And I just got sucked into this, what was a hobby into, now it's my life, of course. But I was probably pretty stressed out back then with the shop. So sorry about that. Anyway, let's we got a lot of comments here I got to get through. Let's look at a few of these, and let's see. All right, low horsepower GT500 says, when running anti-squat brackets on a 07 GT500, should the compression setting be higher than rebound on Viking shocks for drag racing?
Always.
Yep. Okay.
Always.
Compression's always going to be higher. So
yeah.
Right, because the anti-squat bracket, obviously you're looking for anti-squat, so you're looking for a little bit of a looser rebound to drive the tire into the ground, and then the compression kind of holds it there. Is that
that's
kind of right?
That's very basic.
Basic. Just
yeah,
and then it sits there, and then hopefully at that point you can get a little rotation going, and 160 foots.
People don't realize that a rear shock on a car that separates, the most important thing for the shock to be able to control is actually the squish of the tire. Remember when you said that Paul dynos on a shock dyno with like slicks and stuff to see what type of force?
Yeah, he dynoed
the compression and the extension.
Yep. Yeah, on the side-by-side, he dynoed the tire to model that into the whole shock model.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So yeah, always compression high. Just rule of thumb here, on a GT500, it makes 500 plus horsepower, depending on a slick or radial, but anywhere from 6 to 12 on the compression. So, it just depends. There's too many variables, but never, ever, ever have I ever had a car work good with less compression than rebound on a car that separates with brackets.
All right, there's your answer. Remember, Kelly, these questions were asked a little bit ago, so we're just going back. What front skinny was that on the 2015? I assume he was talking about your car. What size? Was that a 17 back then?
Yeah, that was a 17x4 Billet Specialty street light with a Mickey Thompson SR radial. Not very light, but again, back then it was, he's did what you could do to get parts that fit the car. But yeah, it's a good combo. I like the newer Billet Specialty stuff. They're quite a bit lighter than that street light I had. But yeah, it was a 17x4.5. Yeah.
Very cool. I got Billet Specialties on my 2011. Jason Woody, I don't have any experience with VMP, but lately I'm hearing a lot of hate on them. What's up with them? We'll skip that question. Whipple is way better than VMP AC Force. There you go. He just answered you. Andrew Cahill. Kelly looks hot. All right. Ultra Gaming Predator swap a BRZ. I think that would actually be cool. Those BRZs, I don't know if they're considered a cool car, but they're just so small. It would be cool to put some big engine in there. Either a Predator or Godzilla, something huge that hangs out of the top of the hood. Let's see what else we got here. Logan, Kelltrac himself. What's up, Logan?
Logie Bear.
What's up with your car? You still have a car? I don't even get a chance to browse Facebook anymore. Serpent Stangs. Hey, Ken, took the GT500 to the track today and was having some issues. Car felt strange at Watt and went into a sort of limp mode. Check engine. Misfire 7. Maybe it could be a plug issue. Hit me up on Messenger or email. We'll go over that. It also could just be totally nothing wrong with the plugs, but it just registered a misfire. And when it goes into that mode, it'll start cutting cylinders and it will drive really bad, but nothing's actually wrong.
There's a question.
Logan says, let's see, I'm looking for a question here.
Quarter miler.
There you go. Yep, I just got there. Kelly, what are the main suspension parts needed to make an S550 hook on unprepared surface? My friend needs help, and his 10 PSI P1SC is suffering with traction.
All right. I'm going to make this real easy. A tire, a good tire. I like a bias ply on the street. I don't like them on the track really on a boosted car, but I like them on the street. A tuner that's willing to work with you usually goes a little bit, and I'm not saying bug him at midnight. I'm saying somebody that would maybe just send you a tune that has a little bit less power on the hit. and a good rear shock and a good coilover setup up front. There's a lot of IRS parts out there. Personally, I've done a lot of testing on my own cars. I've had quite a bit of S550s, and the IRS parts that all the companies offer, BMR, Steeda, UPR, et cetera, they work really good. But those are really, just being honest here, those are track parts. Those are for consistency. Those are for if you do have wheel hop, you get rid of them. I just got rid of a car that was very impressive for what it was, and I bought the car just to test some stuff out and then sell it. And I had one IRS modification, shocks, coilovers, and a couple lightweight parts, and the car performed excellent. It would hook on the street. It's maybe not quite as fast as that car, but it probably wasn't too far off, to be honest. But yeah, something to control the front from dropping back down, something to control the back movement, and a good tire.
That's what I was just going to ask you that question. You answered it a little bit there. I think it's easy for people to wrap their head around what the shocks do on a drag car a little bit, you know, not exactly. We explained it, anti-squat, squat, and controlling that. But what's the role of the front? You know, I know a lot of people, they instantly go like shocks, and, you know, depending on what level car they are or how long they've been doing this, they don't even consider the front at all. They're just like, what?
It's actually, to be honest, it's probably the most important.
I would agree, but
yeah,
you know, it's hard to explain to people why. I'm not a suspension expert, but just like kind of give them an idea of the role of it through the past, from like the beginning of it and then down the track.
Yeah, let's talk about S550. I like talking about those cars, and I think you could agree, Ken. They're fun because they move a lot, you know, so they're interesting to work with. So the whole deal with an S550, for example, is here's your car. It's like a seesaw. I mean, you know, if you pick one side of a board up, the other side doesn't come up, right? So, I mean, if the back squats and the front comes up, it doesn't go, you know, right. It's a solid piece, right? So anytime that the back of any vehicle squats, the front has a tendency to point the headlights up, right? So the front's coming up. The whole goal is to control the movement. So that's it. So if you know in your head that the goal is to slow down the movement of your car, then the car is going to work better, because then that prevents the counter reaction, the unloading and everything. So on an S550, everybody does a rear shock, and I can Band-Aid that. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty proud of this, but I went a 1.2 60 foot on an S550 before anybody for over a year. And at the time, it was impressive. 17-inch wheel, you know, stock converter, stock trans, et cetera, et cetera. And I Band-Aided having a stock strut when I did that. And what I mean is I would jack the compression up so much on the back that it slowed how it moved instead of doing this. So if you take a front strut, the whole goal is when the car goes up like this, when the front of a car comes up, it's putting physical weight on the back tire. So if you had that car on scales and you tilted the front up, it's going to shove a lot of the weight to the back tire. That's how you have to think of it. So keeping that front up keeps more weight, physical weight on a scale on the back tire to keep it planted. So on a stock strut, it comes up real fast, but then it comes down real fast. So that movement is changing the weight on the back tire, which interrupts the travel, right? So that, I tell people a lot. I understand that a coilover kit's $1,500 with caster camber plates, but at the same time, you could take a car with stock shocks in the back and have a really good coilover setup, and I guarantee you it would work as good or better than a car that has a shock with a stock strut up front, because you can actually hold the weight transfer. You can't hold it on a rear shock because the front's just going to drop back down, because that's where the majority of your weight is. So to control the heavier end of the car actually works better to put weight on the back tire. Hope that explains it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's, I just was, while you were educating everybody there, I went and found another video. This is the Jimmy's car that I was talking about earlier. And I believe, let me see here.
This car's one
yeah,
of the
this is the
reasons that it
1.2.
came out.
Yeah, this is the 1.2060. Actually, you know what? Let's just watch this whole video real quick.
All right.
Oops. That right there is why we didn't leave hard. All right, let's watch that one more time in slow motion so we can kind of see what's going on here. But this was a 12060 foot, and as you can see, it was really not super.
Yeah, we locked the back down and we locked the front up basically.
Yep. Here we go.
You remember, Ken, when you would drive that? Remember when you got a little bit of air under the front tires and I was unhappy about it?
Yeah, it does.
You run out of travel on it, and it's like hitting a limiter.
Yeah, definitely.
Race car guys like the limiters, but on an IRS car, not so much.
There you go. Okay, so let me back up just a hair here. Here we go. Just barely raised the tire off the ground, but barely. So, you know, and this car actually did leave harder than that in the past, and did okay. But explain to people why that's a bad thing, because, you know, what happens to the rear of the car when the front tires come off the ground in a case like that? Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes you wind up on the bumper. But
yeah, exactly. What happens when you saw that daylight under the tire, what happens is that stops the travel of the front, which jerks the front. So when the wheel's coming down and it just stops, right? It jerks the front. So it kind of like the front's coming up and then it stops it.
Right. Basically, think of like the up until that point, the strut's almost like giving the car a boost, right? Like you're lifting somebody up, and then all of a sudden you let go because, you know, right?
Yeah, it's just,
there's nothing supporting it.
But the problem, and I'm telling you right now, I would say that most of the time when you see a car unload the tires, S550 car, the tires are in the air. Now that I said that, when you watch videos and you see somebody strike the tire on a really good pass, you think it's going to be a good pass, the tire starts spinning with the front in the air, okay? And the reason is because when that tire stops, it jerks the front and it stops the back from continuing its travel. So it comes up and stops when the car wants to keep on rotating. You don't want to do that. So, which leads to why I came out with a new S550 front strut setup. It's been very popular. I've gotten really good feedback on it. Paramount Speed just went 860s on 20-inch wheels with it. And I'm going to say that a really good reason why is because I actually have an extra about 1.25 inches of travel available on the extension. So that video that we just saw, that car would have kept on coming up and smoothly going instead of stopping.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good time to kind of point something out, because it really just people that watch this feed all the time probably sick of hearing it, but it's really a good example why I like to work with certain types of people, and other companies are just not as fun to work with or productive to work with. He just said it right there. And it's the same thing that I get from Whipple. Like, I talk to Dustin Whipple almost as much as I talk to Kelly, and we're constantly like coming up with ideas, like right there, like, oh, I've got this set up, that this strut and this valve. I mean, you're not going to get that from any other shock company. Not really. I mean, probably on like a super high end level type of program, but nothing like what we're working with here. So Kelly's bringing something to this market that just doesn't exist. Most guys would just go by, okay, they're following a recipe, but the problem is recipes don't always work across all cars. Or maybe that recipe worked last year, but now he has a new recipe, and you're buying stuff that people figured out 2 years ago. So if you want to stay like, if you want the info that maybe like is just as it's getting figured out and be one of the fastest guys to lead the way, that's when you work with a company like Kelly has as opposed to just, Viking. He's working with Viking. You can get similar hardware and maybe really struggle to get somewhat in the ballpark results, but it's certainly 1,000 times easier to work with somebody like Kelly. And how's that work, Kelly? So, obviously you sell them the shocks and struts, and then like, how's the advice portion work? Do you charge for like trackside support, or do you have any kind of services where you go to the track with people, or is it all just kind of like reviewing video after the fact, or how do you do it?
So one of the things that I make sure to do is service after the sale. Service after the sale for me isn't really like, hey, torque that bolt to 79 foot-pounds. It's helping somebody dial the car in. So what I do is somebody hits me up and they say, I have this, that, and the other. And I just lay out. Sometimes I'll sell them a BMR part just to make it convenient, but I lay out what they need, they buy it. And as soon as the product ship, I send them my spec sheet. I basically tell them, if I'm going to help you, I need you to follow the instructions on the sheet. It's very important. Okay. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
You know how important the S550 stuff is. So, and then after that, honestly, at this point, I've just been telling everybody, if you need me, send me a message. I do prefer that they use the Kelltrac page. But if you're my customer, I don't have enough customers right now to where I can't get back to people. So I've just had everybody message me when they're at the track. I tell them, send me video. But I will tell you that, I've been really pushing this hard for a while now, and the baseline stuff just works so well,
and that's a great, example. I mean, honestly, your business is kind of in the same vein as the tuning side of things, as far as, providing a service. It's very easily measurable service, at least by some of our customers. Your customers more so than my customers, because I'm selling tunes to people that don't go to the track too. I assume that most of your customers are looking for ET.
Racing, I actually don't sell to them usually.
Right, they don't need. They're not going to need it. I mean, they may be racing on the street, not having ET to measure their performance, but they're going to measure their wins and all that kind of stuff. So I, especially like on new things like the GT500, I've tried to make myself as available as I can. That's why I started my own Facebook group for that. Because I'm not always 100% accessible directly, although I try to be on the newer stuff or stuff that I'm dealing with directly. Quite honestly, right now, a question on a Mustang GT is probably better for Rob anyway at the moment. He's touching those more than I am. I mean, I touch everything, but he's doing the 18 Mustang GT 10R80 stuff like crazy, and F-150 stuff, and I'm doing the GT500 stuff like crazy. But the point is I've had a couple customers that have come to us and they're like blown away by the communication, and it's really like a two-way street, or it benefits both parties. Like, certainly I'm doing things because I like to help people. I'm the type of person that I just enjoy helping people, whether it has to do with cars or just if I see somebody struggling, with a package, or loading into an air, their package at an airplane. But I'm also very much, I guess I would say, it's self-interest. Every time I help one of my customers, I'm helping myself, and I'm helping my next customer that much better, which is what Kelly alluded to. In the beginning, he probably spent quite a bit of time dialing in his valving, basically the valving on the setups, but then also the adjustments and what adjustments are needed in certain instances. And so he's to the point where he can get, a really good package to you, and the advice that's almost, you might need to make a few adjustments, but he's going to get you a really good starting point. And that's how I feel where we are with our tuning. So it's kind of like a similar deal. It's, yes, we can be there for you and help, but we've done so much of it and enough of it that it's also a very refined product. So you should be able to do fairly well with it without a lot of the support. So it's kind of like, we can give the support, but you may not need it.
Right.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
nice.
And, you know, one of the things that I know there's a few people that are watching this video right now. But it's also nice to have guys like you that Rob is a good example. Rob and Trevor both, you know, I probably annoy him, but sometimes I'll have a customer that we have a lot of mutual customers. So, you know, a lot of times I'll ping Trevor or Rob and say, hey, you know, I don't know if you know or not, but this guy's like street racing. Like that's all he does, like serious street racing, right? And because I know that, you know, the guys can't know everything about every customer. I know they do a good job, but you know, I've had a couple guys. I mean, listen, if you buy a setup from me and you got a TVS 6R80 car and you're trying to go street race and launch from first gear on asphalt with 20 degrees of timing on the hit, it's not going to hook.
Yeah,
know?
and
So
that's a really good, very important point, because I'm sure people aren't going to come to you, Kelly, and try and get suspension advice and not tell you what they're doing with the car, right? If they're road racing, they're going to be sure to say, hey, I'm road racing with this car. I need, you know, this type of advice, or I'm street racing, or I'm half mile or quarter mile, whatever. But people come to us all the time for tunes, and they never are. We don't really necessarily ask you because, you know, we tune a lot of general use cars that people are just driving to work and they go to the car show and they go race their friend on the highway. And, you know, that's one type of tune. But if you're doing something really, really specific with the car, you should let us know. Specifically road racing for sure, because that's most extreme duty you could probably do. Drag racing is actually the least, it's the worst for a very short period of time, and it's probably worse on things that Kelly deals with suspension really than it is on the engine. And then of course street racing and roll racing is probably, you know, roll racing is probably one of the worst ones, because a lot of the times you're just out doing hit after hit after hit. So, you know, if we kind of know what you're doing with the car, it makes it a lot easier for us to tailor the tune to you guys. We actually just had a guy ask where you kind of about what you were talking about, first gear, asking if we tune any turbo 6Rs with 273 gears, S550 specifically, to help tame down the steep first gear.
can't get them.
Yeah, I don't think you can. What was the lowest we could get? 315.
You can do a 3.0 and a 9-inch. You can do a 3.0.
Yeah, we did the 273s. I got a 273 in my my 11, but S550, yeah, we put the white car that we just showed with the really good 60 foot had a 3.0 in it with the G-Force 9-inch. Kevin says Kelly has him weighing everything on his 2018. You know, that's another important thing. You know, that's something, you know, people see me with my carbon fiber stuff on my GT500, and I make a little bit of a joke about it. And a lot of the carbon fiber stuff is really for looks than weight, but weight is super important. That was my big thing back when I had a 2-valve, and it's always a big thing for me. My 2011 is light. And light isn't just about, like, you know, cheating the system, or it's really beneficial to you. The lighter the car, the less stress is going to be on all of the stuff that Kelly gets set up on the suspension. Hopefully break less stuff. Brandon Smith says, Kelly, huge help on S550 when he was breaking drive shafts. You want to talk about drive shafts a little bit real quick for those that don't know about it, and, you know, how we got to that point and what some of the fixes are, or if there are fixes?
Yeah, that's a big issue. So,
I know from selling them, you know, we don't really work on them that much, but, like, I mean, I don't even like selling them. Yeah. But why is it that? Why are they a pain? Explain that to me.
So if you go fast, you usually go with a U-joint transmission. If you have a U-jointed transmission on both ends, U-joint, the goal is, and I'm not going to get too far into the technical side of it because some people cannot wrap their mind around how driveline angle works, but you got your rear end, you got your transmission, engine transmission. When they're supposed to be basically parallel.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem with an S550 is the rear end actually points up above the transmission. That's it, exactly right there. Bam. So this is 4.5 degrees up. This is 3.2 degrees down. That's your average like S550 roughly. They're bound up already. So here's what I'm going to tell you. When that drive shaft is rotating, the invisible angles meet right in the middle. So what does that do to the drive shaft? It makes it go like a jump rope. That's the perfect example. So when that drive shaft's spinning, it's trying to swing it like a jump rope.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's what's causing them to bend. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times you'll see people online saying, I got my blah, blah drive shaft. I took it to the track and it's vibrating really bad now. And they're bending them because, everybody's making 4-digit power. People don't realize how much power that really is in a 3,800-pound car. You can break anything. So
yeah, I agree.
When you have these drive lines, these angles are all jacked up. Ford started using 2-piece drive shafts in 2011 for a reason, and they vibrate. If your angles aren't right, they vibrate.
Right, but with the 2-piece drive shaft, that kind of eliminates that issue. Yep. So instead of getting a drive line right, they're like, well, we don't need to because we've got a 2-piece drive shaft reason anyway.
Yeah.
So the right answer would be to somehow realign the rear end, but the design of the rear end and how it's hung is not the easiest way to do that.
Yeah.
Is the problem.
Yeah, there's a guy out in Texas that's a real popular street racer and, builds a lot of S550s. And I don't know if he's watching or not, but he's hit me up quite a few times. And I've spent, till wee hours in the morning helping him get some driveline angle situation. He was on the dyno a couple weeks back and snapped 2 drive shafts trying to get a car ready to bring down here to FL2K, I think it was. And I go out of my way to help people, man, because if I know that I've learned something that's that important, I don't care who you are. Even some of the people that have me blocked on Facebook, if they message me for help on something that I truly know about, I would probably just go ahead and tell them how to do it. But so there is a procedure. You can shim the cradle. A G-force 9-inch makes it perfect. Just want to throw that out there. So you're not going to see as many issues with a G-force, assuming that everything's made right and everything's done right. The G-force takes the basically the pinion flange and it drops it closer to parallel or even down a little bit.
Nice.
In this zone instead of this. So,
that definitely worked well in Jimmy's car because that car, I've never had a project go so smooth until the end of it. Yeah. Let's look at a couple more questions here. Sal says, Darkness is awaiting some Kelltrac love. That's Sal Shiano. Yep. Honestly, his car is one of the most impressive street cars out there because it's like a legit, we all say things are stock weight and but we're all playing little games or tricky stuff here and there. And that's not really doing that. They're not really doing that. It's air to air, which a lot of people run fast with air to air, but the whole car is heavy. They're making so much power and it's so heavy that the air to air is becoming an issue. And I heard that they may be changing that up. And then some shocks and struts from you. Man, yep. I mean, what's that car been? It's been 170 plus already.
Yeah, 8.0s at
8.0 at 171 maybe or 173. Yeah. And that that's with the air temps over 200 degrees at the end.
Yeah, that car, Ken, it's funny because I was hanging out at Colin's shop the other day. It's been a little bit now, but Sal's car was there and we got to talking about it. And I got to looking at the car. I've never really looked that car over. Mm-hmm. I think I remember messaging you after I left there. And I will say that I do think that is the most impressive 6R80 car, period. At this current time, I know people have been faster. I'm a big fan of Brett. Brett LaSala's car is one of my favorite cars, period. I've told many people that. But Sal's car had the stock diff, the stock aluminum. I mean, dude.
Yeah, it's very, it's very representative of just a very good combo. I mean, it does have a custom twin turbo kit on it, don't get me wrong. Yeah. So it's not all off the shelf parts. It's all done very well, but it's not like a race car in disguise at all.
Right.
At all.
Right. Yeah, it's impressive. Colin, you know, Sal's the shot caller, and Colin, you know, tells him what to do. But they've done a really good job with that car, seriously. And I've seen it. I've been to a lot of these races at Bradenton where it's, you know, 88 degrees out, you know, and the car's going 819, 814,
Yeah, that car, no matter
821.
what, is in the low eights, no matter what.
Yeah, so it's a very impressive car.
Yeah.
Very.
Javi50 says he looked at your manual coilovers. If you're not at the 1,000 horsepower mark, but eventually you'll eventually get there. Should you do the 1,000s or should you go with the lower ones? So, you know, should you build ahead, like, you know, get the big injectors, even though you're not making the big power yet? Or,
Yeah.
you know, you think you can get by with that?
It really depends.
It's not optimal, I would guess, or otherwise you wouldn't have the multiple options. So, you know, the real answer is for the best results, you're going to need to run the best strut for what the power level is at that point. But I'm sure you could get by if you really know for sure you're going to go there, right?
Yeah, that's true. And this is the one thing, and I know that, you know, maybe a couple $100 more expensive to get the good stuff. But what I try to tell people is the nice thing about the more expensive offering, like the what I call the R-Comp Crusader, or anything that, you know, is a little bit more customized if you get it through me, is a lot of people don't realize this, but I have no problem changing valving on something. Do I think I'm going to need to? No, that's why I do what I do. But if I need to change valving on something, and a lot of times I'll just send the valve kit for free to the consumer and just say, "Hey, get on the phone with me." If I'm confident that they can work on it, I can tell them how to do it, or I'll just have them pay the shipping to and from me, and I'll do it myself. But the thing about the lower cost, like a Warrior or a, you know, any of that stuff that's not a legitimate Crusader valved strut or shock, it is what it is. So you get it, and then if you need to get rid of it, you get rid of it. You can't improve it. You can't, you know, you can rebuild it, but I mean, you know, why are you going to rebuild a basic double adjustable? But my point is, it's always good to go right in, all in. If you know that you're going to get a coilover, for example, then just get the best, because it'll support all the way into nobody just stops. Nobody says, I went 1099, so I'm done. Everybody goes further and further and further, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Next question we have. Well, Zach Duncan asks when we're coming to Texas. We'll be there for Texas 2K, whenever that is. Usually like second week of March, I think. Logan says JC is the GOAT. I don't know what we were talking about having to do with JC, but Road Cone Terry says, how much improvement on his car versus Viking Crusader setup? Now, obviously, I'm sure you know Terry's car a little bit. That's the orange Whipple car with turbo 400, and it's very fast, but it really hasn't. I would love to see you get more involved in that car, because that car should be a 7-second car. You know, we haven't had great track conditions, but I really think that's a 7-second car all day long, and that's a really heavy car. For those of you guys don't know, Terry's car is like, he's really anal about how everything looks. So it's not cut up. It's got a, you know, full cage in it. You know, it's definitely not light, and it's been 830s, I think, at, I don't know what speed, 170 maybe, or high 160s, 167 I think is what it was. But the 60s like in the 1.3 range. So what can obviously it sounds like he's just got an off the set of Viking Crusaders.
So I don't know. So one of the reasons that I
dance
really
around these questions sometimes.
Yeah, the reason I decided to do this is because it drives me crazy. And I made the comment earlier about, you know, 600 plus horsepower, you know, go to this. So it really bothers me that everybody bases, you know, a shock on power, or everybody sells the same shock. And again, that's what got me going with this whole thing, is if you have a Viking Crusader in the back of an S550, I have found that the S550 cars want a stiffer shock on the compression, and the shocks that everybody has just don't have that.
So you
maybe
offer something with
contend
more
compression.
more compression. Okay.
So that plants the tire.
Mhm.
So if the body is squatting down on top of the tire, it's transferring the weight to the back tire.
Mhm.
But when you slow that movement and the front still comes up as fast as you can get it to come up controllably, then it's pressing down harder on the tire. It's putting more force to the tire.
All right. So here's what
So
go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was gonna
tell you, any boosted car that has an off-the-shelf Viking Crusader from any company that just sells them and doesn't actually cater to you, the shock that I offer 100% will make the car work better. There's no question about it.
So here's what we're gonna do. I know Terry a long time, and he just got like the coolest graphics made for his car, road cone Terry. He's got it on his trailer. He's got it on his truck. He's got T-shirts. He's got sweatshirts. He's got long sleeve shirts. So I know he can afford another set of shocks. So right now, the one spot that Terry's car has come up short is in the 60 foot. So I'm gonna put you guys together if you're cool with that, Kelly, and see if we can make that a 7-second car. That'd be
what about the front? What's it got on the front?
I don't know what's on the front, Terry.
If I remember right, it's got like maybe some Steeda stuff.
Well, yeah, that's a sensitive topic. Obviously, you got. There's all kinds of weird loyalties that people have and all that, and at some point, and I've never been a recruiter, never ever. I challenge anybody out there in 15 to 20 years of tuning to ever find me go up to somebody and say, I don't care who tunes your car, I could tune it better, or who's tuned your car, why does it run bad, I could tune it better. I never recruit people. So, but I offer help if people, he's asking questions, so let's offer help. Right. If you want our help, or not our help, I have nothing to do with it. If you want Kelly's help, we tune the car, of course. If you want Kelly's help, we could put it together, but it's not a half-ass thing. You can't do half the car. You can't do half of what he says. You got to do what he says, and you'll have a 7-second car, is my guess. If not, I'll figure out a way to make it go 7s just to prove myself right. No, I'm just kidding. Kelly will get you there, I'm sure. But you have to listen. See, that's the problem. Is I've worked with a lot of different people.
Terry's car does. Hey, Ken.
Yeah.
If you were to watch a video of a pass where Terry spins the rear tires, I'm going to guess it can go back to what we talked about earlier about the travel. Remember when I said they come up and then I have a feeling his car probably I don't know what he has on the front, but I bet it spins the tire when that tire spins the rear wheels when that tire on the front comes up.
Well, guess what? We're gonna look at it right now because he posts a lot of videos. So this is that's actually a good pass. We probably want one that's not the best. Let's see what this is. I don't even know what it is, so I'm not even setting it up here. Probably would need a video of him actually spinning to get an idea, because that's like I think that was one of his better leaves. Let's watch one more. Picking Terry apart here.
Okay, so see how he carries the tire like that?
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen, though. You know what I mean? So
right.
Clearly apparent.
Right.
He needs to slow the front down, and then he needs to have more travel.
Yeah, basically, the car has worked here and there before. It's just been very, very inconsistent. And I think you're right. Like, when it's worked, it's been on a spectacular track, is my guess. And I'm not picking on you, Terry, but this is a good example of, like, when people get their car to work at a sticky track, and then they go to a more average track, and like track is junk, and then like right behind you a guy goes 690s or something like that. So, you know, or whatever. So, you know, there's definitely bad tracks, but that's the point of being, you know, getting your car dialed in or really knowing your car well and being able to adapt to different tracks and, you know, not just just everything, any kind of adjustments. The one thing that you see a lot of, I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this, Kelly, like these wheelie cars. Again, I'm not a suspension expert, but I've been racing in the NMRA. I mean, I raced 10 years straight in the NMRA, every single race, either as a racer or as a crew chief for multiple people at each race. And there's some cars that you just, and some of them are pretty successful racers that are just on the friggin' bumper like all the time, like they can't keep it off the bumper, and then they're spinning, and once in a blue moon they hit that sweet spot where they make their awesome pass. So, you know, is that part of the suspension tuning where you can like really widen or narrow the window of that? You know what I mean? It seems like is there like a scale, like, okay, so you go from spin to hook to wheelie, right? So the hook part is what you're shooting for. Is the geometry like dictate how wide that window is?
I'll tell you, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about, you know, John Leslie and all these guys that are hitting third gear in the air, right?
Yep.
So here's the philosophy behind that, or kind of why that ended up being how it is. I'll make it real easy to understand. So those are pretty light cars, right? They're naturally aspirated, so they work on what? What do they work on when they leave? What's the most important thing about those cars? RPM, right?
Yeah, you got to keep the RPM
like
up.
2,000 and 3,000,
right?
So they hit the tire very hard. Now, I'm not saying they hit the tire like you do in your 6R80 car. I'm not saying let's use the word shock. When you shock a tire that hard, you need consistency. The only way to get consistency is to put weight physically on the tire, not suspension weight. Because here's the thing, that's a light, naturally aspirated car. If you hung a bunch of weight over the front end to keep the front end down, and you added some separation and you put the right converter in it, then you could go heads up racing. And again, you nailed it. Look at that class, and then look at Renegade, where they just go like this. You know, they just go right down the track because they have a totally dialed in suspension in another way. I recently had I think his name's Adam, one of the guys last year came out with a new car for like Coyote stock, S197 car. He hit me up before the season for some help on suspension stuff. Again, I can't remember one of the Coyote stock guys. And I told him that I'm going to cut you off real quick.
Just keep talking real quick. I got to change my battery.
Oh, okay. But he asked me, like, you know, how come none of these cars have a ton of separation? And I think he tried to do the separation thing, but with a lightweight NA car, you know, I think that the consistency is what ruins it for them. So if I had to guess, they're more set up like neutral weight distribution instead of hanging 56% off the front end and all that fanciness. Actually, as time goes by, maybe they are putting more front end. I don't know. I don't race that class, but I can tell you that the main reason that they do what they do is because they want to hook every time. And the real way to hook every time is to have physical weight on the back tire with the tires that they're using in that class.
Gotcha. You know, and there's thanks to Eric and Adrian for the tips on the chat. You know, I guess there's also a whole different topic when it comes to suspension that, you know, we can only go so far tonight. And it's probably a newer topic because of technology, and that comes into power management, right? How power management actually has changed your job some, because it used to be, and you know, everything was a bias ply. Every car probably squatted, you know, whenever, before I ever started racing, of course. And, you know, now, and you just had as much, you know, if there was only power management was your foot,
right.
or maybe changing like your converter around to leave harder or easier, or your cam timing, redegree your cam, you're not changing that in the software. Nowadays, everything's done through the tune. You have all kinds of power management stacked with traction control on top of it. So, what's the best angle to take when you're dialing in a car that has those features? Do you try to tame down the power management and any traction control to get it as close as you can? You know what I mean? Like it's like the chicken and the egg. Do I start with like a good power curve and then tune the suspension around it? Or how do you, what's a good angle to go there for the really fast cars?
So in my opinion, a car, and again, a lot of this stuff's theory, right? Wheelies versus taking off straight and stuff. But there is a term called wasted energy, right? So when you're looking at getting from point A to point B as quick as possible, I'm a big fan of being pretty aggressive with the separation in the back and tying down the front end and trying to get the car to just take off straight. And the reason is because you're not wasting energy and you're just going straight. So I feel that you can go from 0 to 60, or I really start to look at the 330 foot on a fast car, just being totally honest. Mm-hmm. You can 60 foot a little bit higher actually, but go quicker, just depending on how you do it. I mean, the 330 on a fast car is really what I look at. But my point being is that I think that a car that's really aggressive, that has hardly any chassis movement, can go quicker to the 330 foot mark than a car that has a little bit more power but has a sloppy launch, Mm-hmm. And I think most people would tend to agree with that. But what you have to do is you got to figure out what works for you, what works for what you're trying to do, what works for the class you race in. But for the big power guys, I typically start them out really aggressive and then just have them creep up on it, and then if you have a problem and you think you have too much bar angle, and I'm sure you can imagine, but that happens a lot, to where I have to tell somebody, okay, take some bar angle out of that thing. Right. But that's really what we do. If I get to a point where I think somebody has a separation problem, then I'll take angle out of it. But Whipple Rob Henson, he's a good example of two different things. One, he didn't have enough bite to the tire. I talked them into putting those control arms down in the staging lanes, and I love working with people like that, man. I can't say enough about, they're texting me at midnight, and I'm like, do this, do that, and they're like, okay, we're doing it right there before they make a pass, right? That car benefited greatly from hitting the tire harder on the hit coming off the trans brake. And then the other thing I was going to touch on was his struts. He had some AFCOs that were too soft. He sent them back and had them like radial valve super stiff, and they were too stiff. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that car made, it wouldn't even go a 123 60 foot without either spinning or dragging the bumper. And now I'm sure you saw, Ken, the car going 118, 119.
Yeah, it's awesome. Now let me let's back that up as far as like, okay, so now obviously most of the time you're getting involved just to solve a problem. So you look at a car like that, and how do you know? Like, is it obvious to you that it's definitely a suspension change and not a power management issue? Obviously, like things with the stock computer, we only have so much control over power management. We can change the timing curve a little bit, things like that, but we don't have a lot of control. But let's say he had a standalone in it, we can get a little bit more crazy with it. How do you know when to make a suspension change versus like, hey, maybe we just have too much power, we're hitting it too hard? Yeah. Can you tell by looking at it, kind of? Yeah,
the easiest way, and I think you can probably attest to this because we're always chatting when you're at the track, especially in a fast car. Mm-hmm. What I always ask you when you're like, I spun the tires, I'm like, when did it happen?
Right? Yeah. At what point in the run? Yep.
Yeah. So usually if it happens instantly, it's a power management issue. Now, again, I'm not saying that everybody needs to go to their tuner and say, I got too much power. I'm saying it's usually a track issue or a power management issue if right when you let off the button or right when you stab it, it spins.
And power management is even as simple as two-step.
Too much timing.
Right. Or too much time. Right. But it could even be your launch RPM kind of, yes. I mean, that's going to control the hit. So you have some control over that as a racer too. Right. It's not just the tune.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And, you can attest to this. That's why it's so important to have somebody pretty knowledgeable when you're working with them, because you can have the best tune up and the best shock and the best track and the best tire. Somebody doesn't do a good enough burnout, and then they line up left of the groove. It really is a
Well,
total package.
I was going to mention that when you mentioned about Paramount Speed working on the car in the lanes. I work with a lot of different people directly, especially in the Trackside support deal, basically what you were doing there, but on the tuning level. And those guys in particular. We're not, my direction isn't like yours. You're like kind of directing to make physical changes on the car most of the time. For me, it still relates to how much they can help me, right? That's how much they can help you by actually doing it and changing it. For me, it's providing proper logs. And you'd be surprised how many people want to go fast, and like I get almost no logs from them at all, and they're wanting to know why is this car faster than me? And it's like, well, if you really think the reason that car is faster than you is because of the tune, when I tune both the cars and they have all the same parts on it, then you probably need to rethink that. So, the point of this is we can only help you guys so much, but it's really, you have to make it easy to help you, right? In this case, you have to listen to what Kelly says, especially when you're at the track. There's nothing more valuable than having somebody helping you while you're at the track. I mean, think of the difference, right? You go to the track, you could do video it. I don't care what kind of data logs you have. If you have suspension, travel, logs, which most people don't, except for the race cars. Even if you have all that, you still have to go to the track, get home, email it to him and all that. If you can get a deal where Kelly's on standby, and I don't know, do you sell that as a service, Kelly? We do that for tuning. Yeah, so he would probably be able to do that, or, he may offer consultation stuff like at a race if he's already there. If you're his customer, maybe he helps you out on easy stuff, or if you need him to go up to the line and be kind of like a crew chief situation, maybe he'll do that for money. I don't know. But the point is, we can't really help you unless you help us. We can't really make any headway without the data. So I just see it a lot. People think that this is like Forza, right? Oh, and they list out their parts. I have Viking shocks, and I have this blower and this car and this, and I'm like way off. It's like, it's not that easy, guys. It's not. I just had Jess, if she's still on here, we just got her turbo car done, and we had some issues with that, and she got a little discouraged. But it really wasn't that far outside the norm on putting a car together. You just don't hear that stuff when everybody posts their dyno graph or their ET slip, like, oh, I spent a week friggin' chasing problems on this piece of crap. You don't hear that, but a lot of people are doing that sort of thing. But it's putting that time in that gets you the success. It's the person that just goes to bolt on a part and tells me it doesn't fit without even really trying to make it fit. That's the difference, And we know people like that, Kelly, who have changed quite a bit over time. It's like, this doesn't fit, and now they're doing things that you never thought they would do.
Setting records.
You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, man.
But anyway,
let's answer some of these questions. I've got a bunch of questions on here that
let's ask. Yeah, okay, you could, if you're on there, let's answer this guy because he paid for the question. Answer him first. Adrian, I'll read you this one. Twin turbo S197. What fronts and rear shock struts do you recommend, Kelly? S197. I assume that's a Coyote. We pretty much talked about that, but it looks like you got a potential customer here. So why don't you tell him what he needs?
Yeah, transmission is huge. Okay, so like on my page, Kelltrac.com. I actually make it mandatory that you answer questions. One, you have to agree not to be picky and rush your order and complain a lot, and I make you accept that. Two is you have to give me your race weight, your transmission. There's various things that I make you answer. It's real simple. And the reason is because it's not based on just power. It's not based on just geometry. There's a whole bunch of different things. And I'm going to get back to Terry's S550 after I answer you. But so for it's a turbo S197, right? So if it's like a 6R80 car, then I would do a boosted 6R80 valving. which I actually developed on Brett LaSala's car. When he went 770s, he was using that same, and I think that was a first gear leave on that pass. I don't remember, but anyways, I worked with Brett for a while on different valving. Viking was good enough. That's what kind of got me started in this, to get that done. In the rear, you could either do an R-Comp Warrior that I offer, or you could do an R-Comp Crusader. But really, I can't just tell somebody what they need. If you were to tell me, and what I mean by that is I can't just say order this strut and this shock, because I really want to know the weight of the car and a bunch of other things. If you want to, I have a Facebook page, Kelltrac. You can message me and I can give you all the advice that you need. And I'll tell people, if I think just a Viking part from, Lethal Performance or somebody, or BMR, works fine, I actually tell people that on a daily basis. I'm like, look, you don't need my help on this. You could use a Viking B226 and a J324 AP200K, So my point is it really just depends on the weight. It depends on the transmission. It depends on how you're launching. If you're racing on the street, if you're racing on the track, it is totally different. And again, that's why I do this, because you can't just do all that stuff good with generic valving that's online. And I'm not trying to offend anybody that offers that. And I understand why they offer it, because most people, that part will help them. But if you're really trying to race and really get the car to work good, you really need something that's catered to your car specifically. So I can't really answer without knowing exact details. That's really the answer. But again, if it's a 6R80 car, it would be a 6R80 specific valving. And if it's like a GM trans, and I'll explain why I do this real quick. So on a Turbo 400 or a Power Glide car, we get really aggressive with suspension because we don't have as much gear ratio. So you get aggressive with bar angles and suspension geometry, and you get aggressive with the tune-up compared to a 6R80. So you're going to tie the front end down more. You're going to tie the back end down more. On a 6R80 car, you need a little bit more movement because of the gear ratio. You have to have something that reacts to that starting line ratio, per se. When you multiply your gear ratios together, you get what's called an SLR. The higher that SLR, the more it works the shock. So that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Good answer. All right, let's get back to Terry's car. I think you saw that he answered what struts
he had
were.
A Crusader front?
Yep.
Okay, it says right here, Crusader coilovers on the front.
Yep.
So that is a very common situation for me. And the reason is because you could go to 10 different websites or use 10 different people for products, and you may get 5 different valvings. You may get like an AJ, you may get an AD, an AP, an AK, an AM.
Let's back up, even just explain it to the people that don't really even know much about this stuff. When we talk about valving, it's real simple. Well, it's not simple, but the concept is simple. You have basically a fluid, you got a piston in let's say a shock. This is the shaft. Oh, look at that. It comes apart just like a shock. So you have the piston moving down in the shaft, and then there's oil on each side of the piston, and then there's basically holes in the piston. And as the oil moves through the holes and the shims or whatever, that's how fast the shock's going to move. I mean, that's the most basic explanation of how it works.
The resistance, the
right.
force.
The resistance is how big the hole or passage is in through the piston and the shock. So the valving is going to, obviously it's adjustable valving, but you're adjusting the range and the steps of the valving, I guess, is how you do it, is what you're, what you're basically affecting.
So I'll just give a really quick example. Compare it to like, everybody knows what a Dyno graph is. Okay. So, like a Warrior valving would be like, a naturally aspirated Coyote. It would have like a nice little curve, right? Like on a dyno, shock dyno. Mm. And then if you add a 100 shot to that, then that's going to be like a Crusader. So it adds a ton of power early on. That would be called like your low speed, 1 inch per second, right? Mm. So it just moves real slow. So if you have more force at that slow speed, and then it continues on linearly, it gains, right? It's stiffer. So going back to my comment, there are a ton of different Crusader extension valves. So when a car's launching and the front's coming up, your adjustment on the extension controls how fast the car comes up or how slow it comes up. You have to get that adjustment just right on an S550 that makes 1,000 plus horsepower to get it down the track every time.
Let me interpret Kelly's answer. When we were doing Jimmy's car, he's like, don't worry, man, I got you. Don't buy on stuff on the internet. I got you. And he sent me the stuff and we went 120. So that's his answer. He's basically saying his stuff is better, which I agree with. I'm telling you it is. So, it's just fine tuning, right? It's the difference between getting it's really, Kelly's doing what I do to cars, right? A stock GT500 is pretty badass, but then we tune it and it's better. Kelly's fine tuning Viking's product. We were fine tuning Ford's product. It's really no different. So do you want to drive a stock Mustang? Or do you want to drive a modified Mustang? Right. That's what Kelly's stuff is. Yeah. So, all right.
Somebody asked about a two-piece drive shaft. Ken can vouch for that. I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I told him, damn, I wish somebody would make like a badass two-piece drive shaft to get rid of all these issues. As a matter of fact, it stemmed also when we were talking, I was complaining one day, ranting about the S550 IRS and how there's certain parts of it that Ford really pissed me off on. And one of those is the drive shaft deal, So I want to answer that question directly. I like to innovate. I like to do things, even if it doesn't help me out. I like to just come up with ideas. And years ago, I came up with an idea of a couple different designs on two-piece drive shafts, and I tried to see if companies would make them, and not a single company offered to make my idea. So maybe someday.
Yeah, I recall talking about that, and I was on board. But you think it's a cost problem, or what was? I don't really recall what the issue was.
I'm being told that they're just not confident in the strength.
Gotcha.
And here's what you're going to get. I want to talk about this real quick. So drive shafts. When you call a drive shaft company and you tell them you're going to make big power, it's pretty easy now to make 800 plus. Okay. So when you tell them you're going to make these big power numbers, they typically will tell you that you do not want to use anything but a 1350 U joint, or you know what I'm saying, like right. The big boy U joints. Okay, that's the problem. The problem is you tell somebody that you're going to make 1,000 horsepower with your S550, and then they give you a drive shaft that has a U joint at each end. Well, now you have driveline problems. You really need a CV on that back diff side, so it doesn't have those vibrations. So that, again, there enters the problem is that when you want to get an awesome two-piece drive shaft made, they really have to have multiple joints and a CV joint and a slip joint to work properly. And when you throw all those different parts on one drive shaft, aftermarket companies they're just not interested into it. Either they're not interested whatsoever.
Well, it's funny.
Like asking a tuner to do something totally different. Right?
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up like what would make the drive shaft good, because that kind of leads us to look at what Ford did in the 2020 GT500, right? That's the first GT500 S550, and it surely wasn't going to come out with a two-piece drive shaft. And, I was under my car multiple times really before I even looked at the drive shaft. Part of it is because it's very kind of covered. It has things in the way to really see exactly what's going on. But, it was probably way too long for me to even think about it. Me and Kelly were chatting, and I was like, well, what the heck is on a GT500? I didn't even look.
Right.
And it has dual CV joints, in the front and the back. So that's pretty cool.
That tells you something.
That tells you right there that we know that the problem that we know is there is legitimate, and Ford solved it in that way. Now, I'm wondering, do you think that will bleed over into the aftermarket where they'll start doing like, say, Drive Shaft Shop, right? It's in their name, so we'll talk about them. Do you think they'll start doing it that way?
So. Yeah,
I would think so.
I think so, because I really think that these issues are and you have to agree here. I mean, look at how many drive shaft issues you see. These companies got to be going nuts pulling their hair out.
Oh, I mean, it's been awful on my end. I mean, whenever we come across a product that's a headache, you're just like, oh man. And the drive shaft's at the top of that list. A DW400 pump's at the top of that list. But
Mine's working good with a turn down boost
Yeah,
pump, by the way.
they seem to work pretty well if they work, and then they fail right away if they fail. But real quick, well, let's see. Did we catch up on questions? I don't think so. There might be a couple more questions. Why don't we go through a few more questions? We're rolling up on 2 hours. Get through the questions, and then we can talk a little bit more. Oh, actually, Eric had a question, I think, and he tipped us too.
What's Eric got?
I say he tipped to us, but I'm not giving you any of this money. Actually, he's asking about Steeda. What do you think about something like the Steeda diff support bracket with the support for the ears?
Okay, I'm gonna. Oh, okay. So bias aside, I do think that that's a pretty neat product.
That means a lot because there's definitely some tension there between Steeda
and I'll gladly, I'd like to write a book someday, but Steeda called me at my place of work to try to threaten me because they said I was trying to scare customers about diff bolts breaking on S550s.
Right.
So this is real deal. I get it. You're a big powerhouse, whatever. And I'm not going to sit here and insult them, but I just want to throw it out there that I was coming up with solutions for all these issues with the diff bolts while they were hounding me and basically saying I was stupid and I was trying to cause scare tactics. Just want to throw that out there.
And then they came out with a product.
And then they came out with longer bolts, which at first they said was snake oil, and they came out with these diff brackets. They came out with a whole line of products to help that issue that they said was fake news. Okay. So anyways, I just got to throw that out there. What that really means is I personally think that if you can find another option, I would support that other option. But I do think that the Steeda bracket is a product. Put it this way. If I didn't know anything other than what I know about the diff bushings, if I didn't know brands, if I didn't know what I know now, and I didn't know this, that, or the other, but I knew the importance of that, I would use it. Just being 100% honest.
That's good advice. And I don't do it often, but I've given advice like that before. People have asked me, what's the best this, what's the best that? And, somebody we had talked about earlier, I'm not going to mention again, but I was like, I don't really like those guys, but they sell it and, it's a good product. So get it there. So, at the end, I'm not going to
keep in mind that, what was I doing in Bowling Green 2015, Ken? I was under my car the whole time. Remember why? Because I broke the diff ears.
Yep. Yeah. So. That's right. Did we put an iron diff in at that race?
Yeah. At the track. It was in the back of London Chassis Dyno.
Yeah.
Those cars had just come out. You couldn't even, there was 3 of them at that race.
Yeah. We were still figuring out, we weren't even sure if it would fit, right? Didn't you? Yeah.
And we didn't even know. Jake at Power by the Hour, and honestly, I know we've had some weird tensions over the years or whatever, but I've always loved Jake and those guys at Power by the Hour. And back then, Jake had the whole crew come over in 6 hours probably. We did that, and again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I mean, I probably was the first to do everything with that car, to include put an iron housing in it.
Well, I mean, that really just shows you, for the guys out there that are kind of new to this, haven't done a lot of racing or anything, that's how it goes down at the racetrack. Everybody helps everybody for the most part, even if you're not even enemies, because you want to see, or even if you're not friends, hopefully you're not enemies. But if you don't even like each other, you still want to help each other because you want to race. I mean, my biggest competitor out there offered me a drive shaft in my own car. Speaking of drive shafts, Mod Nats 2 years ago with my red car, or 3 years ago now. Yeah. Almost. I can't do math. No. Well, it wouldn't be not Mod Nats yet. But anyway, the year I broke my drive shaft, Lund offered me a drive. It didn't wind up working out. It didn't fit, but they still offered it to me, and people were shocked. But that's just the racer mentality. So that's why we love racing so much.
I was also going to say, so for Eric, the diff brace deal. I just got to throw this out there. I don't really use as many products on my own personal cars as I used to. Really because I don't have to test like I used to test, but I will be honest, my last 2 S550s, I haven't even really touched the diff bushings. because I'm just, I know that they have some issues. People have them rip and stuff like that. And then at that point, I usually have somebody do like a diff insert kit. But, I just,
I kind of
there's a lot of
subscribe.
smoke and mirrors out there, man. The
Well,
diff bushing stuff and the vertical links, like they
well,
really just don't help those cars.
smoke and mirrors and like things that might maybe give like maybe some help possibly, but also I subscribe to the thought of like don't change it unless you like know for sure you need to change it.
Right.
Because you might be doing yourself a disservice at that point, like making things worse. Like Jimmy's car is a perfect example with the 120 60 foots. I mean, we had the shocks and struts on there, but I don't even remember what that car had, but it didn't have a whole lot.
It just had a couple IRS
couple
parts.
little pieces.
I mean, there was a couple parts it didn't have because I remember you told me, and I said,
I mean, honestly,
that's
what makes that car so crazy because that car got shipped down to Florida, and at that time, I mean, he knows what he's looking at, but we hadn't done a ton of cars yet at that point because that was kind of early on in the Palm Beach Dyno
I remember
story.
answering a bunch of questions.
Yeah, so I wasn't working on the car. Jimmy ships the car down. I go, what suspension? I got all the good shit. Kelly, give me all the good shit. I'm like, well, what did you exactly do you have in the car? It's all the good. It's everything. It's good. It's good. That's how Jimmy was. So, and then we do all this stuff and we start like actually looking over the car and it's gone fast and I'm like, you're like, what? It doesn't, I forget exactly what it didn't have.
It didn't have toe bearings. It didn't have a lower control arm bearing kit.
Yeah.
There's a couple things
it didn't
have. I was like, well,
right. I mean, the car obviously had low miles on it, so the stock stuff was holding up for a little bit. Eric actually had a follow-up question for you down here that said, so basically if I buy all four corners from you, meaning the dampers that you recommend, I can send you videos or two from the track and you'll help me line it out the first time around.
I will do that until I'm too busy to do it. And I tell people all the time, when I get to the point where I cannot keep up with my customers and stuff, and that's when I'll start making some changes. I'll give it an option. Now, it's not really affordable right now for the average person. I just had a guy the other day order my consultation service. It's $750. Okay. But that's not for a race. That's actually unlimited. That's forever. So it's really a good deal because I'm basically telling you, I will help you. I will answer a question. If you ask me, do you think that I have too much timing on the hit? I'll answer you. Do you think this tire's good? I'll answer you. Do you think, not only will I watch your videos and tell you how to do stuff or help you if I'm at the track with you, but anyways, I had somebody order it and I actually called the guy and I said, look, with a combination like you have, let me send you a spec sheet and send me a couple videos here and there and you're never going to need me again. So I actually gave him his money back. So I don't, no, you're not going to spend $750 for me to make your 497 horsepower car hook. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I also don't agree with you because what I've learned in the tuning business, and it probably is again exactly the same, is people aren't really necessarily paying you for the amount of time you put in. They're paying you for the peace of mind that they have you in their corner, and it's nice of you to not take the money for that. But I think you're just being a little too humble too sometimes, and just, take, if, maybe offer a different option for them that's not $750. So to ask you that though, on that consultation deal, did he buy that because like on top of buying the shocks and struts from you?
No.
So it
was just an order for my track.
So it was a situation where he already had it. So he felt like, well, I already have stuff and I just want Kelly to help me. Yeah. And he was trying to,
now I will tell you, we got to talking and I told him that I would suggest based on his combo, he street races. Okay. He's one of those slicks and preps, flames everywhere, money racing guys. Super gutted car. I don't even think he's online. I haven't even seen the guy's name, so I don't even know if anybody knows who he is, but he's in like Louisiana or something. And anyways, I did tell him that when the time comes, let's do some coilovers. some no prep coilovers, and that I would help him pretty much unlimited at that point, just because it's super easy.
Yeah, and that's really the thing. Like, with this sort of help, and when Kelly said, it kind of got my attention when he was like, for now, I will help everybody, because he can't predict the future. I actually went back and watched some old Palm Beach Dyno videos when I was looking for another video, and it was a video about me introducing my new pricing structure, and that I'll never hire another tuner, and I'm a one-man show, and all this sort of stuff. And obviously, that's not how the story worked out at all. But that doesn't mean you can't, continue to offer that services. But certainly, you'll need some awesome people to help you out. Obviously, I've got Trevor and Rob early on were huge helps to build Palm Beach Dyno into what it is today, and now we've got 5 tuners, so it's pretty crazy. So
hey, the guy Adrian said that was an auto 6R80 car.
Okay.
So I'll just be real quick answer with that. I'll give you my Viking suggestion, and I'll give you my suggestion. So my suggestion through Kelltrac would be my boosted 6R80 valving. Of course, I would need to know some more details to pick exactly how I do it. On the back, on a car like that, to be honest, I would just do the R Comp Warrior that I offer. And basically, that's just a Warrior with a little bit more juice to it. Okay. So, again, I mentioned Eric Holiday at JPC Racing earlier. I mean, we've had cars go like 109, 110 to the 60 roughly on Warriors that were like 4 years old, So, a Warrior with a little bit more juice to them, that's what I suggest. Now, if you were going to do a Viking offering from people that stock them or just generically catalog parts or whatever, then in the back, I would do a B226. I think that would be sufficient for you. It's $205 a piece, something like that. And then on the front, I would do a J324 AK would be what I would do on the front.
I got a question. I probably should ask you this off this live feed, but I'm gonna ask you now. Are you not? You don't sell off the shelf Viking stuff?
If somebody wants it, then I will. But it's
they got to buy it somewhere, man. You're giving them advice. You're telling them what to buy. Sell it to them. Put it all up there. Seriously.
No, I will.
Yeah, I know. I know you like the personal feel and the advice part of it the most, but a lot of these people that are watching this, that if they just need an off-the-shelf one, they'd probably rather buy it off you if they can, because you're the one that's spending over 2 hours sitting here telling them how to make their car faster instead of.
The one thing I will tell you every day is I do get a lot of messages about help, and honestly, people had to realize at some point that it's hard to just answer tons of questions, and you know what I mean?
Well, that's why, I like doing these sorts of things, it's to help people that don't know your product get to know it, but also, we're getting, for every one question that gets answered here, there's probably 10 or 20 people that are wondering the same thing, or maybe they're not wondering the same thing, but they're learning off of these questions. So that's why I like doing this sort of stuff. So, it kind of concentrates the advice. So, maybe you can get it out to hundreds of people instead of 1 or 2 in a message.
Yeah. Yeah. The one guy asked about a A6 car, 4C stall Paxton. Just the basic stuff, man. I've had a couple good friends personally, actually, that have had impressive Paxton. Right? You said Paxton, right? Yeah. Paxton cars. The basic BMR control arm stuff, the brackets, middle hole. Okay. 6R car with a converter, middle hole in the control arm brackets, start a shock out, in the 6 to 8 compression to 2 to 4 rebound range, just a little baseline. But just with a basic combo like that, BMR springs or whatever, it'll work. It'll hook.
So let me ask you this, now that you brought that up. How does your advice change on power adder? So you've got a centrifugal car with a loose converter. It's probably going to be a little bit different than like a twin screw car that might have a tight converter, or a turbo car that probably is very differently than both of those cars. Like, does that affect your advice, or are they pretty close to the same?
They're pretty close. I know it sounds funny, but I learned a lot with Ballard's S197 when we had that car. To this day, if you look at his videos of his 122 and 123 60-foot braking, I don't even think he pulled the tire.
Nope.
The car just shot straight out. I learned a whole lot messing with that car and helping him every time he was at the track. And you were there too. I mean,
yeah, I learned a lot on that car too myself.
So my point is I know what to do on the PD blown stuff. As a matter of fact, I kind of really know what to do with those better than anything. As you know, I've always been a blower guy, but it changes. What I will say though is it changes in a very easy way. So basically, a really common start for a Warrior or a rear Viking shock would be like 6 compression, 4 rebound, or something like that. Basically, you just go up like 3 to 4 on the compression and like 2 on the extension. You just go a little bit stiffer because it's giving it a little bit more power out of the hole.
Right.
It's working the angles of the suspension a little bit harder. So you just kind of you just go up a few clicks on each is what you do. You keep that spread kind of the same.
Yeah. Eric's asking how he reaches out to you. You don't have a phone number on your website. Kelly, this is a new deal for Kelly. He's still getting things wound up, so I think mostly it's going to be email for now, probably, right? Or also Facebook. You can go to
Facebook, website,
Instagram.
Email.
Is Instagram okay? Direct message on there. Yeah, you can go on Instagram, which is at Kelltrac. Facebook, which is Kelltrac, and probably is there an email or contact form on the website also?
Yeah.
You can hit them up through there, and then I think longer term, Kelly plans on ramping this up and probably having a phone number and all that stuff. But for now, it's going to be written.
And I'll call. I talk to people, but
yeah, he'll talk to you on the phone. It's just, you're still working other stuff, so you can't just. There's no point in having a number if you can't answer it, right? That's just worse.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, I'd rather have a message with an email that I can get back to than have somebody call me 3 times during the day and they don't get an answer. So once he gets into a situation where he's going to answer the phone during normal business hours, I'm sure there'll be a phone number up there. But that doesn't mean you can't talk to him on the phone.
Yeah.
Dennis asked if we're going to do this weekly or is this a one and done? This show, Palm Beach Live, PBD Live, is definitely a weekly show. This is the first time I've done an interview deal. Sometimes we highlight customers, or most of the times we've highlighted customers or new products. I've been wanting to do this for a little bit, and Kelly was nice enough to be my first guest. I'm sure someday I'll have Kelly on again, but we will be doing this with lots of other people. I've already spoken to Dustin Whipple will be a guest. He may be next week. I've spoken to Jay from Real Street Performance. Obviously I'll have Rob on here. Who knows? Write down in the comments who you guys want to see on here, and I'll see if I can make it happen. Obviously, I've been around this industry for quite a while, and I know a lot of people that I think you guys are going to want to hear from. So, the biggest question is do I split this off into something different? To me, this is more like a podcast, although it is a question and answer deal. I really want to do the podcast style deal, which we've done somewhat, interview Kelly, get his history, have us talk about things in the industry. And I want to do more of that. So I'm trying to decide, I'm just feeling it out basically. Do I make this all one show? Sometimes I do interviews, sometimes I don't, or do we just have a separate interview style deal? And just have 2 shows. Answer is I don't have time to do one right now, so it's probably going to be one. Anyway, let's see what else we got here. If anybody has any more questions for Kelly, this is definitely our longest live feed ever, which is great. It's went real fast. We've had lots of good questions, so if you have any more questions, let us know. Nick, is my entire crew coming to Texas 2K? Yes. Well, I assume so. I'm sure Rob will be there. Yeah, most likely everybody will be there. At least not for the whole time, maybe, but like maybe some of the guys will fly in. I plan on doing more Mexico racing than I do at the track, but I will register anyway. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to race yet. I really need to get my red car back out. AC says he's looking forward to Rob. Yeah, we'll probably do Rob maybe instead of having, Kelly lives 3+ hours away. So we did this remotely, but with Rob, we could probably just do it at the shop. Logan, actually, good question. When we were talking about earlier about shocks and low speed and high speed bump, I was going to bring up the triple adjustable. So what exactly, why would you need 3 adjustments? I mean, I know, but I'm asking you, tell everybody, why would you need a 3rd adjustment? Like when does that come in handy on a drag car specifically? Well, I guess it's a drag car more.
I'll talk overall.
Yep.
So we've talked about the valving a little bit on how a shaft moves really fast or real slow when it extends, right? So there's theories out there that, you want to be able to adjust portions of that movement, and it works. It's actually really, really nice. The number one benefit is you can use valving that's a little bit more streetable. So to go back to what we talked about earlier about Crusaders and Warriors and all this stuff, I just want to throw this out there. Viking made Crusaders for race cars. I just want to throw that out there. I've seen over the years, some people are like, I got my Viking Crusaders, they broke, or they ripped my car in half or whatever. They're so strong. They're for race cars. If you're driving them on the street, put them at zeros, put them full counterclockwise, full loose. If you're trailering them, full counterclockwise, and that's all in the instructions. But anyways, so that's leading me to what I'm talking about with triples. Triples allow you to have more of like a Warrior style, more reliable street valving, but they allow you to control the compression forces, high speed compression for race car activities. So what that means is you can set your compression force on the way that works is there's 2 knobs, and then there's a little key, an Allen key down like it's like a triangle, right? So compression, rebound, and then high speed compression. You can adjust that to where it responds how you need it to when you're racing your car, but when you're driving down the street, your car doesn't see high speed compression movement. So what makes that really nice is on an S550, an S550 likes a decent amount of compression to plant that tire. Well, if you have a triple adjustable, you can set the compression for when the back squats real quick. It can be stiffer for hooking for the drag strip, but when you're driving down the road, it'll be low speed. So it'll just be cruising along, moving.
Or a real bumpy track even.
Exactly.
If it's got to be real stiff, I mean, there's some tracks out there that are not very nice down track. So that's another advantage, I mean, you get the same benefit in like the super fancy drag shocks that are electronically adjustable where they're changing them throughout the whole run. And that's basically what they're doing. So you're doing it through valving where it's just, the hit is controlled one way and the rest, everything else is controlled.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that valving real quick too. So I just want to throw this out there. I like people to know, nobody's going to know that people don't think about this stuff. The most important part of the shaft speed on the front of an S550, for example, actually all of them, is low speed. So when you have the front of the car coming up and then it wants to come down, that's not like super fast. It's slow. It's low speed. So you want something that can, put it this way, if you were to take a front of a car and lift it up and let go and it stays up, that means that the low speed is very stiff. Like if you were to try to take it on a table and compress it, you can't even budge it. That's what's holding that front of that car up. And I think Will at RareFab took a set of struts that I sent for maybe Carlos's car, Vera, and he lifted the front of the car up and it just stayed. On the back, it's the opposite. You want the extension valve to hold the low. You want it to hold that back down and come up slow, right? So that's what's getting me into the triple adjustable. In my opinion, the triple adjustable for the front really isn't needed because you don't ever need a high speed compression valve unless you're like road course. See what I'm saying, Ken?
Yeah, for sure.
So
yeah, I can see that. Like the best, the most you really need on like the front, like obviously you want to keep the front up, but like one way to picture it, like, you know, if you want the front to settle down, like I picture like jumping off into one of those big, like a stuntman into like one of those air things, right? The car, you just want the front to come down nice and soft, you know. It's going to hold it up, but then it's still, obviously it's going to come down, but in such a slow manner that it doesn't unsettle the car, right? You don't want it, you know, otherwise you wind up with actually my very first race. You spoke about the predecessor to Viking was QA1. I had a set of blown QA1 struts on my car at the modular shootout, and it's a hilarious video. My car was just bouncing on every shift like 3 times. But all right, real quick, we'll go over a couple more things here. Walter had an interesting question. Spring rate versus the dampener or the shock. He says
spring rate is to control the. Let me make that easy.
Well, let me ask it like how he asked it real quick, because just to make sure we answer his question. He said that the S550 drag springs are typically 800 pounds per inch, which you would know. I don't know that. Any advantage going stiffer versus more compression? So he's asking, when do you go spring versus valving?
That's an amazing question. So we're going to get a little bit further into tech here. The S550 has these. I'm shaking the table. Sorry. The S550 has the spring in the middle of the pivot. So like you have your wheel and you have your body of your car, and then you have an arm. Well, the spring's in the middle. So it's like a 50%. We call it 50%. So
there's a name for that, right?
Motion ratio.
Yes, that's it.
So the real measurement on a car, the motion ratio of an S550 is about 0.494. 0.493, which is almost 0.50. So that means it's almost in the middle of the travel. So what I want to say about that really quick is, if you have an 800-pound spring, a really quick way to like bench race the actual rate at your wheel on the outboard side by your wheel, your actual rate would be to divide that amount by, say, 4. So an 800-pound spring is going to be 200 pounds at the wheel of force. So if you were to move your wheel up and down and you measured how many pounds per inch it took to move it up and down, it's not going to be 800, it's going to be 200, okay? So as that amount goes up, then, for example, a 1,000-pound spring would only increase your actual wheel rate 50 pounds per inch. Sounds crazy, but if 1,000 divided by 4 roughly is 2, and again, I'm using very rough numbers. These aren't exact. Is 250. So that actually leads to why I'm going to answer this question the way that I am. Going from an 800-pound spring to a 980, which is my preference. If you ask anybody that's worked with me since I left BMR, I've almost pretty much set everybody up with a handling rear spring at 980 pounds per inch. And every time I do it, they're asking me why I'm doing it. That's what I run on my own cars. Again, ever since I've left BMR, I started doing that before I left, but I always set people up with the stiffest linear spring, no progressive, that I can do. Again, it's not going to be a big difference. You're only going to add 30 to 50 pounds per inch at the wheel. So what you want to do is you want to combine that stiffer linear rate spring with the stiffer shock. And what that's going to do is the stiffer spring is going to actually apply more power, more force to the tire, to the ground. And then the stiffer shock's going to slow that movement, because the only function of a spring is to support weight. That's what it does. A shock controls the support of that weight. So it controls the speed of the movement. It can delay it or it can speed up that movement, where a shock controls the force to the tire, or it just supports the vehicle. That's all it does, is it just supports the car. You'd be surprised at how you can actually get by with some crazy spring rates that people would never think of, because springs, to be honest, really aren't as important as people think they are.
Yeah, somebody told me that a long time ago, which was basically what you said, which springs definitely do matter. And I think it's worse if it's too stiff. Right?
Yes.
Would you agree that too stiff of a spring is a much worse problem than too soft of a spring? Because you can add dampening, but you can't take away that rate. Like if the car's not squatting hard enough, you can't make it squat harder if your shock's already at zero, right? But if the shocks, or if the spring's super soft and the car really wants to squat and you want to slow that down, you can, if the dampener's, up to the task, of course.
Yeah, you'd rather be over dampened. That's what it's called. You'd rather be over dampened and than under dampened or oversprung. Because think of it like if you had a spring on a table and you compress it and you let go, the stiffer spring is going to shoot up to the ceiling, right?
Right.
The softer, and I'm talking travel for travel, 1 inch for 1 inch.
Right.
So the stiffer spring. So the reason I'm saying this is because if you have a stiffer spring, then you really need a better shock.
Right.
Because when you do squat that suspension, it's only going to try to come up that much with that much more force because of the spring rate, right?
Yep.
So just like valve springs, right? You need more supporting with a stiffer valve spring. Just like on a suspension, you need something that can support that stiffer spring rate. But I tell this to everybody, if you're talking drag racing, you can use a 728 pound, like a performance pack rear spring with a good shock, and you can do about as good as, up until 1,000 horsepower, that spring works perfectly fine.
Very cool. All right, we got a couple more questions here, and then we'll wrap it up. Drag radial or stiff wall slick for a 3,600 pound A6 S197 on asphalt, 600 rural horsepower, no prep. He gave us lots of details. That was good. So asphalt, automatic, no prep, 600 rural horsepower, drag radial or stiff wall slick. I think you're going to say a slick. That would be my guess. Asphalt sucks, but
yeah, it does. with less gear ratio, I actually think that a radial at 600 horsepower could work.
Yep, 600 he said.
But the gear, people don't realize the gear ratio is so hard to control in those cars. So for that reason, I think that that for 600, it just depends.
What about a second? What about I don't do a lot of dig street. I don't do any dig street racing.
Right.
But on something like that, a second gear leave would probably be smart too. No. Or
absolutely.
On the no prep stuff, especially. Yeah. 600 real horsepower at the track, I would still leave him first. But on no prep, second seems like that would work well.
And then you have different types of cars. I don't know if I ever showed you the video, Ken. Did you ever see Kyle Mason's car out on asphalt after he put my stuff on the car?
I don't think so.
The NA car?
I know Kyle. He works for us.
You would. I'll send you that video.
I don't know if I've seen the video, though.
It's insane.
If I have, I don't remember it.
It's insane. That was on a radial with a ton of separation. Car just left flat and just took off. But my point is it depends on your style of 600 horsepower. That's what I'm trying to say. His car is naturally aspirated. It made over 500, maybe a little less than 600. Had a ton of anti-squat. Was a super lightweight car. And we got that thing to leave in first gear on a 6R80, and it just took the hell off. As a matter of fact, I haven't seen many rear-wheel drive auto cars leave that good, period, on asphalt. So,
he's got a lot more power coming. It'll be interesting to see how that whole new project works out. Nick wants to know, how does the spring rate on a coilover differ from a standard spring strut? Well, I'll let Kelly answer that, but as he pointed out, where the spring is makes a real big important determination on the math. So how does that coilover obviously is right at the wheel. So how do you figure that out? So let's give some numbers. You have an 800 pound spring on a S550 and it's halfway, right? So you're saying that's 200 pounds.
Right.
So does that mean you put a 200 pound coilover spring for the exact same deal? Roughly?
If all of the variables align properly, yes.
Roughly. We're just really talking big generalities.
Right. Then you have what's called angle correction factor.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have weight here and weight here, but then you have a spring at an angle like this, as you can imagine, it takes a stiffer spring to hold it up because that spring is...
Because it's not working in a linear fashion. We all think of springs are always working in a linear fashion, but that's on a car, that's not really going to happen.
Right. So what I tell people typically, and I had a set of coilovers on my S550 in 2014. I was helping Viking actually develop coilovers for those cars. We gave up on the project for a couple of reasons, but I had ended up working at somewhere between, I think, like a 275 and a 300-pound spring rate was pretty close to what an 800-pound linear spring was.
Either way, it's going to be a lot less on a coilover versus
it is
in general.
Now on the front, this is a good conversation to have. On the front, the 11 and up Mustangs come with a coil spring over, or 05 and up Mustangs come with a coil spring over strut design. So it's a coil over strut, basically, right? So in that case, there's a difference only in the fact that the factory springs have like a 4.5 to 5 inch diameter, where a coilover spring is usually a 2.5 inch diameter. So in some cases, we can't go as soft. And I'll give you a real good example. A lot of my customers have a BMR drag spring, which is 150 pounds per inch on their S550. And then I set them up with a coilover kit, and we can't do 150 because the car's too heavy for a 200 or 150 pound spring. And the reason is because the spring bows. So because the strut's at an angle.
Okay. So and that combined with the thin diameter, or not thin, but
shaft.
Yeah.
Yep. It damages. And I remember telling you that.
I've seen that before.
On Jimmy K's car. When, remember I said the spring shouldn't really work for it, but it's race car, so we're going to make it work. Yep. So that car we did a 175 on, but if Jimmy K were to drive that car a couple hundred miles a week, he would ruin those struts.
Right. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Kelly. I really appreciate it. I think it went really well. If this turns into a huge podcast, you are officially the first one ever. Anyway, yep. Why don't you stick around a little bit? I am going to just sign off here to everybody, but I want to talk to you before you sign off on the video call. Anyway, thanks for joining us, everybody. Please like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, share this. We'd like to hear your feedback. We want to hear what kind of topics you want to hear about on the channel. We can talk about new products, customer accomplishments, and we want to do more interviews. People in the queue already are Dustin Whipple, Rob Shoemaker. Who else are we going to have? Jay from Real Street said he would do it. All kinds of people. Obviously, I'd like to do as many of these in person as we can. This was kind of like actually a spur of the moment deal with Kelly. I just asked him this morning to do it. But long term, I want to start doing these in person too. So let us know what you want to see, who you want to hear from, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.